Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Marvel. I Became a God in American Comics. Chapter 81. But Arno didn't have such restrictions, so he made a change. He held the Codex of Life in his hand and emitted yellow light, and the power of his mind gradually penetrated into the Codex of Life to make changes. The first principle engraved in the genes of all Kryptonians is still loyalty. But it has become forever loyal to Arno Stark. The second is the original gene map hidden in the deepest and oldest ancient Kryptonian genes. The yellow light in Arno's hand went out, and the blue light emerged and turned into silk threads, which merged into the skull little by little, and used the power of space to extract the ancient Kryptonian gene. Infinite evolution, infinite power. Al felt the information from the golden light thread representing the ancient Kryptonian gene, and without hesitation, the blue space thread in the palm of his hand pulled it and merged it into his body little by little. A faint golden light emerged on Arno's body, and every cell was cheering. The body, which was close to saturation and could only absorb sunlight slowly to grow, suddenly absorbed the sunlight from the sky like a dry sponge. A golden light flashed in Arno's eyes, and his platinum pupils almost turned golden. This is, the upper limit has been raised. Feeling the visible growth rate of the power in his body during the growth period, Arno's mouth gradually curled up. Even Clark, who was lying next to him, felt the scorching sunlight coming from the Godfather next to him. It made his originally weak body instantly recover to fullness. Arno looked at the bright sun in the sky and said to Clark, "Come on, Clark, today will be the day you become the true god of the world." Clark, who was getting up. Squeak. At this moment, all electronic devices in the world began to have snowflakes. "You are not alone. I am General Zod." A blurred face appeared on the display screens in every corner of the world, and began to play in different languages in various countries. "I came here across the stars, just for one person. Kal-El, hand him over to me. 24 hours. If Kal-El still doesn't show up, the consequences will be borne by the entire Earth." Beep. All monitors went black. The whole world was in uproar, and the people began to panic. Governments looked at the images of alien spacecraft sent by satellite with grim expressions. They knew that this was not a joke by any country. The Earth does not have such technological products now. This time it was a real alien invasion, and the Earth ushered in the first global crisis. And there was only one solution. Find Kal-El. All countries in the world issued the highest wanted order. Find Kal-El. And just when the whole world was looking for the so-called Kal-El, the United States, above a military base, two figures stood quietly in the air, looking at the triangular alien spacecraft outside the Earth. "Godfather, who are they and why are they looking for me?" Clark was a little confused. His biological father just told him his real name. And then aliens came to Earth with this name to find him. Is this reasonable? This is not a name, it's the death note. Our people, Kryptonians, are General Zod and others who were exiled to the Phantom Zone because of the coup your father said. Kryptonians, aren't they our people? Clark was a little happy. In addition to the Godfather, he was finally going to see other living people. Hee, don't be too happy too soon. General Zod has a deep grudge with your parents. What do you think he came for this time? It's for the life code in your body. If I didn't take it out with the power of time. If he took it out by force, you would be dead. Arno's words were like a basin of cold water that extinguished Clark's eager heart. But Arno didn't intend to give him time to build up his mentality. This is a good place to show your power. Get ready. It's time to let the world know your existence. Let them know that the hope and fear of this world are on you. Arno glanced at the large number of monitoring equipment around the military base and nodded with satisfaction. This can record the next miracle in all directions without blind spots. He took out the Kryptonian spaceship brought out from the North Pole from space and sent a signal. Suddenly, outside the Earth, the spaceship where General Zod was located received the signal. "General, it's that spaceship." It sent a signal again, and this time the location is very accurate. Zod opened his cold eyes. "Fiora, bring Kal-El back to me." A female Kryptonian warrior wearing black Kryptonian armor and looking heroic stood up. "Yes, sir." Fiora, General Zod's adjutant, is also the most powerful Kryptonian warrior in existence besides General Zod. She took a tall Kryptonian who was nearly 3 meters tall and flew directly to Earth in a small spaceship. Arno glanced at the duo who set off from outside the Earth, patted Clark on the shoulder and reminded him. Your opponents are here, don't hold back just because they are from the tribe, otherwise you will lose miserably, show your strength to the fullest. Arno said without waiting for Clark to reply, and turned into blue light and disappeared. He was not worried that Clark would lose. Although Clark is now a dozen years younger than in the original book, his means are no longer comparable to the original Clark. Superman can fight the Kryptonians who have just arrived on Earth and have not absorbed the sun's rays, not because he is weak, but because he is kind. He never killed her, just used all his strength. Otherwise, with decades of sun exposure, how could he be defeated by a few Kryptonians who had never been exposed to the sun? Even if he had only been exposed to the sun for nearly 20 years, it would be no problem for him to fight Fiora and another Kryptonian big man. Arno disappeared from the blue light and reappeared next to General Zod. Years of fighting made General Zod's senses extremely sensitive, and he looked at the extra person beside him. You are. Click. Arno grabbed Zod's chin with one hand and lifted him up, forcibly interrupting him. Zod did not immediately pry open the hand that was pinching his chin. Instead, he hit Arno's temple with his crutch. Boom. With a loud bang, Arno did not move at all, but General Zod's entire arm was numb from the shock. The 4 Kryptonian warriors guarding the control room rushed up immediately when they saw General Zod being caught. Boom, 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 boom. They slept peacefully. Do you surrender yourself, or do I make you surrender? Light words, huge harm. You are delusional. Kryptonians will never surrender to others. Arno's eyes were indifferent. Oh. The yellow light penetrated from Arno's palm into General Zod's brain, making his eyes dull instantly. The yellow light on Arno's hand did not flash away. It is not difficult to control General Zod, but what he wants is not control, but eternal loyalty. Just like the Krypton gene map in the Code of Life, he modified General Zod's first gene consciousness to be forever loyal to himself. But it must be said that General Zod's will to be loyal to Krypton is really firm. In the process of mind modification, even if General Zod dies, he is unwilling to be loyal to Krypton and be erased. Arno expressed his admiration for his firm will, so he was kind enough to strengthen the brainwashing of the mind. However, it did not completely wash away General Zod's will to be loyal to Krypton, but only changed it from the first will to the second will. The first will is naturally loyal to Arno. The second will is loyal to Krypton. After all, he must rebuild his own Krypton kingdom in the future. General Zod's will to be loyal to Krypton just allows him to better protect his kingdom for himself. 10 minutes later, the yellow light in Arno's palm subsided and he let him go. General Zod also opened his eyes, and a bright yellow light flashed in his eyes. Arno Stark, you are not Kal-El. Feeling the name he needed to be loyal to in his mind, General Zod's eyes were complicated. At first, he thought Arno was the son of his former best friend who was born naturally. That's why he has spatial and mental abilities that they Kryptonians don't have, but now it seems that he is not. Of course not, the Kal-El you are talking about is still on Earth now. After listening to Arno's confirmation, General Zod stared at him for a while before speaking again. But, Kryptonian, very good, at least you are still a Kryptonian. Drew Zod, I will serve you all my life and die. General Zod knelt on one knee and touched his chest to show his submission. Get up, I'm not a farmer, just call me Arno from now on. Arno smiled with satisfaction. He did not completely change General Zod's thoughts. In fact, General Zod did not change at all except for his loyalty to himself. General Zod was also very clear that Arno had changed his will, but he could not raise any idea of resistance. His inner loyalty to Arno made it impossible for him to have any bad thoughts about Arno. The only thing he could be thankful for was that Arno was also a Kryptonian. Don't worry, although you are not willing to be loyal to me, you will not regret it. Arno looked at Zod, who had no choice but to accept his fate, and a blue light flashed in his hand, and the Code of Life appeared in his hand. Code of Life. General Zod's eyes were red, and he subconsciously wanted to reach out and grab the Code of Life. But he had just thought of this and he put his hand down involuntarily. Arno smiled at this and threw the Code of Life in his hand. General Zod hurriedly took it and held the Code of Life carefully. He was a little annoyed by Arno's rude behavior towards the Codex of Life, but he still kept his temper. You need to treat it carefully. The Codex of Life is extremely precious. It is the last hope of Krypton. Oh, don't worry. If it can be damaged so easily, it would not be the treasure of Krypton long ago. It has been destroyed 1,000 times. And Arno didn't take General Zod's cautious treatment of the Codex of Life to heart. Instead, he put his arms around the back of General Zod's head and looked into his eyes with his eyes burning with red light. Don't make a mistake. The last hope of Krypton has never been the Codex of Life, but me. Feeling the burning red light and arrogant words emanating from Arno's eyes, General Zod did not have a trace of fear in his heart, but showed a sincere smile. Good momentum. Now I believe that you can really restore the glory of Krypton. Arno let go of Zod, emitting a dazzling yellow light in his hands, and chuckled. Hee, it's not about restoring glory, but the Krypton I rebuilt will be even more glorious. After saying that, he pressed the yellow light in his hand to the ground. In an instant, the entire Kryptonian spaceship was covered by yellow light. The power of the Mind Stone instantly connected all the Kryptonians on the spaceship and began to modify their wills. Although the other Kryptonians on the spaceship were also loyal to Krypton, they were far less tenacious than General Zod. So it didn't take long for them to be brainwashed by Arno all at once and became his loyal subjects. Of course, just like General Zod, they only changed their highest will to be loyal to themselves, but did not wash away their self-consciousness. General Zod stood aside with a blank expression, looking at this indifferently, everything, without any action. Not only because he is loyal to Arno now, but if he were in Arno's position, he would do the same. He even did it more absolutely, directly washing away everyone's self-consciousness and turning them into killing machines in his hands. In comparison, Arno's method is already gentle. At the end of brainwashing, Arno ordered all the Kryptonians on the spacecraft to come to the huge French window in the control room. He walked to the window with his hands behind his back, his eyes staring directly at the shining sun in the universe. The sun is the most perfect gift given by God to the Kryptonians. Turn off the radiation protection layer of the spacecraft. Hearing Arno's words, the Kryptonian in charge of controlling the spacecraft system was stunned, but he immediately executed the order. As the radiation protection layer was closed, the radiation of the sun shone on all the Kryptonians in front of the French windows in an instant. The Kryptonians, whose physical fitness was far superior to that of ordinary people, suddenly felt that every cell in their body began to absorb the solar radiation crazily. Physical strength and sensory abilities continued to increase, and a fiery energy slowly rose in the body. What a group of hungry children! Feeling the sunlight radiation that was instantly absorbed by the surrounding space, Arno began to emit a bright yellow light. The power of the ancient Kryptonians, together with the almost infinite energy in his body, emitted sunlight that was hotter than the sun on his body surface. The Kryptonians, who could only absorb the radiation from the sun, together, instantly felt like they had come from a crowded small pool full of people to a vast and boundless ocean. No longer had to compete with the people next to them for that pitiful solar radiation, everyone had unlimited sunlight to absorb. Soon, after using the Stark brand power bank, each of them reached the upper limit of their body's absorption of sunlight at the moment, and was forced to stop after approaching saturation. After the last General Zod opened his eyes, all the Kryptonians completed their transformation. The first thing that changed was their enhanced senses. The tiny engine noise on the Kryptonian spacecraft was like thunder in their ears, making them cover their ears in pain. And their eyes also penetrated their companions' bodies and saw their internal organs. All these changes made the Kryptonians present feel dizzy. Calm down, it's normal to feel dizzy. You are powerful Kryptonian warriors, calm down and control your senses. As Arno's faint voice sounded in the hearts of every Kryptonian, they gradually calmed down. General Zod completely controlled his surging senses in less than a minute, and his face returned to normal. What an incredible power! General Zod felt the powerful force coming from his body. Even as calm as he was, his face was a little excited at this moment. With this powerful force, it has become easier to revive Krypton. Arno ignored General Zod, the paranoid. Instead, after all the Kryptonians adapted to their senses, he taught them the experience of using bio-force fields and thermal vision again. After they have mastered it all, at this moment, all Kryptonians have been upgraded to true gods on Earth. Oh, except for the 2 Kryptonians who went to Earth. General Zod also realized that his deputy Fiora and another capable person went to Earth to bring back Kal-El. Now that he has obtained the Code of Life, he no longer has the intention to kill Kal-El. If it weren't for the difference in ideas, he and Jor-El would have been best friends. Therefore, if it wasn't a last resort, he didn't want to kill Kal-El after he could achieve his goal. Besides, Kal-El is also a Kryptonian who has absorbed solar radiation for so many years. His strength is probably not comparable to that of Fiora and the other 2 who haven't absorbed solar radiation yet. Because of the transformation of the mind, Arno can also know Zod's inner thoughts. Don't worry, your adjutant will be fine, and Kal-El will be fine too. As for now, come on, Zod, let's go to see a good show together. As he said, he opened a space door and walked in. You are on standby in the spaceship. Without the order of the Master or me, you are not allowed to act rashly. After that, General Zod followed into the space gate without hesitation. Earth, the United States, a certain military headquarters. General Swanwick, the highest commander of the headquarters, was watching Clark, who suddenly appeared in the military base and the alien spacecraft flying from outside the Earth from the surveillance with a serious face. But the next moment, a blue space gate appeared in the headquarters. At the same time, except for General Swanwick, the pupils of everyone in the headquarters turned yellow and became sluggish. Swanwick felt the powerful mental power around him, stood up alertly in an instant, and orange-red light flashed in his eyes. If you dare to look at me with your pirated thermal vision again, I will crush your ugly green head that dare not show its true face. Arno walked out of the space gate, followed by General Zod with red light in his eyes. As long as General Swanwick, or Martian Manhunter, dares to make a move, General Zod will not hesitate to smash his head with his thermal vision. Although General Zod looks very oppressive, it is the calm Arno who makes Martian Manhunter feel a fatal threat. Arno naturally stepped forward and sat in the commander's seat. And the technicians in the command room began to operate the computer. Seeing this, General Swanwick immediately felt bad, but as soon as he moved, a thick red laser shot him away. His black camouflage was also forced to show the green-skinned Martian prototype under Zod's thermal vision. Arno just glanced at Swanwick, who was shot away by Zod's thermal vision, and made a casual comment. Although the color you show is also disgusting, it is much better than before. Martian Manhunter. Snap. As the last button was pressed by the technician, the military broadcast the scene in the military base to the world. General Zod didn't know whether to say it or not. There was no need to go through so much trouble. Their spacecraft could directly control the global network. Arno knew it, of course, but he wanted humans to make it public through their own channels. Let them see for themselves the battle of gods that appeared through their own lenses. Arno smiled, and 2 buckets of popcorn appeared in his hand. After handing 1 bucket to General Zod, he watched the live broadcast. In the picture, Clark was about to make peace with Fiora. But suddenly, his and Fiora's faces changed at the same time. 2 voices appeared in their heads. Don't waste time, just defeat him, her, directly. Arno and Zod's voices appeared in their ears at the same time. Because of Clark's absolute trust in his godfather and Fiora's absolute loyalty to General Zod, the 2 instantly lost the intention to talk again. The moment the 2 pairs of blue eyes looked at each other, Clark and Fiora understood each other's meaning. Fighting, cool. Fiora took the lead, pulled a tank beside her, and jumped up to hit Clark. Z. The red light cut the tank in Fiora's hand in half with the molten iron, making her attack miss. But Clark forgot that Fiora was not alone. The 3-meter-tall strong man hit Clark's waist directly from the side with a liver-bursting punch. Bang! With a sound explosion, Clark turned into a white shadow, smashed several buildings in the military base, and triggered a series of explosions. Boom. HMPH. Easy to solve. The big man confidently snorted with disdain. What is the unrestricted natural production of Kryptonians? Just Notha is just a weakling who has never received any combat training. Fiora's blue eyes looked at the flames that exploded, and she noticed something was wrong. A figure seemed to rise slowly in the flames, and 2 red lights lit up on the figure's head. Fiora's pupils suddenly shrank, and she kicked hard, and her body instantly moved sideways. Z. 2 red beams of light broke through the flames, directly blasting the 3-meter-tall big man into the ground, and continued to blast downwards. Clark's eyes were red and his face was a little hideous. The big man's blow to his kidneys was not very harmful to him, but it was extremely insulting. Therefore, he wanted to teach this stupid big man a lesson, letting him know that his kidneys should not be insulted. You should know that the way thermal vision can hurt is not only the high temperature of more than 5,000 degrees, but the unparalleled impact force is also extremely terrifying. Even though the big guy has a strong physique beyond ordinary Kryptonians, he can't escape from the huge impact of Clark's heat vision. He can only be forced to bear the huge impact and be blasted into the ground. But, as I said, there is more than one Kryptonian coming. This is not a one-on-one justice duel, but a group fight. Whoosh, boom, Fiora jumped up again and blasted a huge missile into Clark's face with her bare hands, forcing his heat vision to stop. She also fell to the ground and slid for a distance in the aftermath of the explosion. For this face-to-face explosion, Clark floated out of the explosion flames unscathed and patted the non-existent smoke on his cloak. He remembered that the Godfather told him last time to remember to open the biological force field when doing things, and don't make it dirty, so as not to be complained. If that's all you can do, then this battle is over. The red light in Clark's eyes was still there in the sky, and his tone was indifferent, like a god. Although he said so, he would not really kill Fiora and the others. After all, they were his people, not criminals. Otherwise, his thermal vision would not only press the big Kryptonian into the ground, but would directly cut him into pieces. But he would not hold back too much, at least he would make them completely lose their combat effectiveness. Son of Jor-El, your strength is indeed stronger than I thought, but... Fiora's eyes were also indifferent, and she tore off the transparent mask on her face with the voice of General Zod in her mind. Suddenly, the sun's radiation shone on her face without any hindrance. She endured the hearing filled with the aftermath of the explosion and the sound of burning flames around her. Fiora calmed down and followed the guidance of General Zod in her mind. She untied the radiation-proof armor that was more like a restraint than a protection for Kryptonians, leaving only a pure black combat suit. While madly absorbing sunlight radiation, Fiora's eyes began to flash red, and her body slowly rose into the air with Clark. Son of Jor-El, the real battle is about to begin. Next is the confrontation between two gods on Earth. Countless people in the world who were watching the live broadcast on TV couldn't help but feel fear when they saw the two people-like human nuclear bombs on the screen. This is the power of miracles. But there are also a few people who have more complicated emotions besides fear. For example, the archaeologist hidden in human society, the demigod, Wonder Woman, and Diana Prince. She looked at the two people on the screen with destructive power like gods, and hesitated to look at the god-killing sword and Amazon Aegis in the closet. There is also the billionaire Batman, Bruce Wayne, who is in the Batcave, watching the many screens filming the battle between the two without blind spots. His fingers tapped unconsciously on the table, and the ominous premonition in his heart reached its peak at this moment, making him decide to be fully prepared to deal with everything that might happen next. Finally, a curly-haired boy stood on the top floor of a tall building, and for the first time, a strange and bright light appeared in the eyes of Lex Luthor, who was only a teenager. A subtle smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and he murmured to himself, "God has come to the earth, and we are like lambs to be slaughtered." But no matter what they think now, at this moment, except for Diana who is a demigod, most people don't even have the qualifications to intervene in the battle between Clark and Fiora. Not only humans, but also the hot weapons that humans on this planet are proud of are not qualified. As Fiora took off her armor and awakened her ability, Arno's mental power also modified Fiora's will and gave her the next task. While Fiora felt her power getting stronger, she also noticed the modified will in the order that will conveyed to her. Her blue eyes narrowed slightly, looking at Clark who did not take advantage of her awakening ability to sneak attack, but quietly waited. With this battle, will the Son of El become the savior of this world? Interesting. Then, as you command. Fiora's red lips curled up a smile, and the red light in her eyes gushed out towards Clark. Boom. Humans will naturally not sit and wait to die when they see the two people whose destructive power is becoming more and more terrifying. Especially the US military, when they saw their own military base being wantonly destroyed by two people and broadcast live to the whole world, they couldn't hold it anymore. Isn't this just slapping me in the face and making the whole world laugh at me? I'm really an alien who can't stand your father. They don't believe that anyone, or aliens, can withstand thermal weapons. They believe that as long as they are still carbon-based creatures, they can't withstand the power of thermal weapons. If not, it can only prove that the firepower is not enough. With this mood, the US military sent 10 of the most advanced fighter jets to the military base where the two fought at high speed. Approaching the target, please give orders. Following the pilot's report, the US military issued an order. Carpet bombing. Kill these two fools. Clark and Fiora, who were punching each other in the sky and falling to the ground, moved their ears and looked at the 10 small black dots in the distant sky. The fighter planes did not arrive, but the attack arrived first. Swoosh X-40. 40 missiles with long tail flames were fired at the two people. Clark and Fiora were not anxious yet, but General Swanwick in the command room was anxious first. There are still tens of thousands of people in the military base, how dare they do that? General Swanwick's eyes were bloodshot, and he wanted to stop the missiles. Although he was a Martian, he had already developed a deep affection for his subordinates during the time he was hiding on Earth as a general. But before he could get up, Zod's big feet stepped heavily on him, and his eyes shining with red light looked at him indifferently. Lie down, don't move. Arno glanced at Swanwick, who was still trying to struggle, and said lightly. Don't worry, I'm just lending you the venue, your men will be fine. He snapped his fingers, and tens of thousands of soldiers controlled by the Mind Stone appeared in the command room building where they were in a burst of blue light. Boom! The carpet bombing of 40 missiles almost engulfed the entire military base with fierce flames. Of course, this also included Clark and Fiora. But this crystallization of human wisdom that can destroy everything, in addition to setting off a sea of fire and leaving a mess. The damage to Clark and Fiora is almost zero. Why do I say almost? Because the violent explosion made Fiora, who had just mastered the explosive hearing, feel a tinnitus. And the consequences are very serious. A black shadow rushed into the sky from the flames, like a black arrow that instantly blew up a fighter plane. Boom! Fiora flew out of the explosion of the fighter plane and landed on another fighter plane in an instant. And her eyes lit up with red light, and 2 scorching rays instantly shot down the 6 fighter planes in front that were planning to evacuate separately. Boom X6. Finally, he tore off the wing of the fighter plane under his feet and threw it directly to the 2 fighter planes on the left and right. Boom X2. As the last fighter plane that lost its wing fell under his feet. In just a few seconds, all 10 of the most advanced fighter planes of the US military were destroyed by Fiora. Only then did the red cloak slowly float out from the flames of the military base. Now most of the cameras in the military base were blown to pieces, but the global live broadcast was not interrupted. Instead, it switched to the satellite footage and continued to broadcast live in real time. But there was no sound, and people could no longer hear any conversation between Clark and Fiora. Son of L, it seems that you don't love the humans on this planet that much. Clark's expression was indifferent, and he was unmoved by Fiora's ridicule. What I do is beneficial to the entire planet, and bloodshed is inevitable. And they are not innocent either. Really, the people here are not innocent, what about the people here? Fiora smiled coldly, and her blue eyes looked at the city in the distance. That is, Metropolis. Clark's cold pupils shrank suddenly, and he roared. Stop it. He didn't care about those guilty people. In his opinion, those with blood on their hands should be prepared to be swallowed by blood that day. Are those pilots innocent? Hee. But he loves other innocent people on the earth in his heart. Fiora ignored Clark's roar, turned into a black shadow with a white circle, and flew towards the city with a loud sound of air bursting. The sonic boom was so loud that it resounded all the way. Until Fiora flew into Metropolis, the sonic boom resounded throughout the city, as if foreshadowing the coming of disaster. Countless people in Metropolis watched the woman who destroyed the world on TV, flying all the way to Metropolis. The speed was so fast that they didn't even have time to escape. Boom! Fiora fell like a meteorite, the ground was shattered in an instant, and then a huge air wave blew away countless vehicles and pedestrians around. The vehicle hit the wall and exploded, but the people in the car and the people who were blown away were brought to a safe area in an instant by a tall red and blue afterimage. The rescued people couldn't help but look up and stare at the red cloak floating in the sun. Is that the god who saved them? Clark just smiled indifferently and prepared to leave. But a shudder sound came with a female voice. Hero, please tell me who you are. The teenage girl, Lois Lane, held a camera, her eyes sparkling as she looked at the figure about to leave in the sky and shouted. Clark slowly turned his head, looked at the girl, and said softly, I'm Superman. As his words spread to everyone's ears, Clark faced the sun like a god who saved mankind, and rushed towards the woman who was facing away from the sun like Satan. Like a world-famous painting. Bang! Fiora, who had been waiting in the air for a long time, let Clark save people and pretended to be cool, and swooped down towards Clark again. There was no other way, she had to continue acting. This was just the master's task. Just like that, the two fought all the way. Fiora destroyed all the way, and Clark saved all the way. The traces of the two's fight spread throughout the city. With the despair brought by Fiora's terrifying destructive power. It was the hope brought by Clark saving countless people. Let that red figure be deeply engraved in people's minds. With Fiora and Clark, they almost renovated the ground of the Metropolis and fought to the next city. Finally, someone couldn't help it. The first to attack was not the US military whose 10 fighters were just shot down by Fiora. Instead, it was a person, or a god. Jun 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 jun. As a non-existent BGM sounded, a golden lasso suddenly tied up Fiora who was fighting with Clark in the air from the ground. Suddenly, Fiora and Clark looked at the woman in red and gold short skirt armor who was pulling the other end of the golden rope in surprise. Wonder Woman, Diana is here. Kryptonians, stop it, I won't let you destroy the Earth like this again. Diana said and pulled down hard. Before she had been in the sun for a long time, Fiora, who had consumed a wave with Clark, was actually thrown off the ground. Boom, but such damage is not a damage to the Kryptonians at all. Fiora stood up from the pit she was smashed into, feeling the toughness of the lasso of truth on her body and the huge force coming from it, her eyes became indifferent. The Master's order was to help Clark become a god who saves mankind, but he didn't say to limit his power and not cause casualties. In that case, then, go to hell. Z. The violent heat vision shot out from Fiora's eye sockets, and directly blasted Diana, who was holding the lasso of truth tightly and had no time to dodge, into a building. This also forced Diana to let go of the lasso of truth, allowing Fiora to break free of her hands. Facing Diana who suddenly appeared and tried to destroy the Master's plan, Fiora was not as gentle as facing Clark. After the heat vision blasted Diana into a building, the whole person flew up with boundless power and punched Diana. Boom! Even if Diana reacted in time and blocked this terrifying punch with the Amazon Aegis. But it was still blown away by Fiora's huge power. The shock wave from Fiora's fist and shield directly cut the entire building in half. And Diana's strength did not decrease, and she went through several buildings before stopping. Kryptonians, so terrifying. But Fiora had no intention of stopping, and flew straight to Diana again. Clark watched this scene and had no time to appreciate the fight between the two women. He flew up quickly and caught the upper half of the building that was cut in half with both hands. Clark didn't have time to watch, so naturally someone had time to watch. If there is anything that is the most interesting thing in the world, then the fight between two women must be one of them. Arno crossed his legs in the command center, eating popcorn and watching the science fiction blockbuster without special effects on the screen, and couldn't help but think of the low-profile version of Superman in the American TV series in his previous life. The little baby of the motherland who likes to drink milk. If it were him, let alone whether he could bear the weight of a building, even if he could, he probably wouldn't be able to catch it, and would just pass through it. Superman can catch objects without damaging the objects themselves because of his biological force field. Homelander basically has no force field, or the biological force field can only cover himself, but can't extend out. I don't know if there will be a chance to open the space gate of the Black Robe world in the future. He is quite interested in the more realistic screen heroes in that world. Especially the Zubao among them. Such a cute group of superheroes. It must be fun to crush them all to death one by one. He smiled cruelly, looked at the screen again from the satellite perspective, and the Metropolis was already filled with gunpowder, stretched and stood up. Okay, it's almost done, it's time for the final performance. This level is enough to make Clark the god of justice on this earth. Next, some people will jump off the wall in desperation. And Arno's eyes were shining with platinum light, and his expression was inexplicable. He took a step forward, and disappeared in the blue light with Zod. The only person left in the command room was the Martian hunter, whose skin had turned black again. And tens of thousands of subordinates who were facing the ruins of the base outside and had no idea what was going on. Sure enough, it was just as Arno thought. The US military could no longer bear the continuous appearance of these superhumans as powerful as gods. The two of them were already enough to annoy them. They did not launch another attack, not because they were afraid of the loss of the 10 fighters. But they knew that ordinary attacks had no effect on the two. They planned to see if they could wait for Clark and Fiora to lose both of them and then take advantage of the situation. But with the arrival of Diana, the situation became even worse. That obviously evil the woman on the evil side became even more violent. The battle with the man in the red cape basically destroyed only the ground. The battle between the two women was really like that. Every blow could collapse a few buildings or damage a few streets. This is too much. At this rate of destruction, the Metropolis will be razed to the ground in less than half an hour. In one day, the entire United States will be broken up by them. So they gritted their teeth. Rather than letting those 3 guys attack other cities and cause greater losses. It is better to let the citizens of the Metropolis sacrifice their lives for the great love of the whole of America. So, they launched nuclear bombs. 3 other foreigners watching the live broadcast looked down on it, one for each person. Arno grinned at this, and the live broadcast perspective seamlessly switched to the black technology camera of the Kryptonian spacecraft. The entire process of launching the nuclear bomb was broadcast live. Then the world exploded, especially when the Metropolis was protected by Superman and few people died. All the people in the Metropolis were stunned. Oh my God, nuclear bombs. We are still in the city. You put nuclear bombs here, and 3 of them. Are you afraid that some of us will survive? The people in the Metropolis were already somewhat desperate because of the devastating battle between the two women. But the existence of Superman completely extinguished the little hope they had raised again. The 2 women in the battle and Clark, who was constantly saving people, also discovered the 3 flying nuclear bombs. Clark and Diana frowned at the same time. Clark flew directly towards the nuclear bomb, grabbed a nuclear bomb in each hand, and rushed straight into the sky. Diana's arms collided fiercely, and a golden ripple shook Fiora away. She also flew towards the nuclear bomb, and after entangled the last nuclear bomb with the lasso of truth, she also followed Clark to fly high in the sky. Fiora didn't care about the nuclear bombs and the lives of the people in the Metropolis, she just wanted to catch up and stop Diana. No need to chase, your mission is successfully completed. A faint voice sounded beside her, and Fiora turned her head sharply to look at the 3 people who stood beside her at some point. That was General Zod and the big guy who was blasted into the ground by Clark's heat vision before, and Master. The feeling from her heart made her immediately understand that this was the person she needed to be loyal to. Arno just waved his hand and ignored Fiora. Instead, a deep blue space channel appeared behind him. His platinum eyes passed through layers of space and looked at the blue figure standing on the anti-life equation. Silent words came out. The next time I come again, it will be the time to crush your blue bald head. After saying that, he finally looked at the 3 nuclear explosion flames burning in the sky, turned around and walked into the portal. Zod and the other 2 followed without hesitation. At the same time, the Kryptonian spaceship in outer space of the Earth also disappeared in a burst of blue light. Now someone here doesn't welcome him, so next time he comes, he won't be as kind as this time. At the same time, in the original Marvel Universe, Earth, above Stark Manor, a huge and strange alien spaceship appeared in the sky of the manor. Such a huge spaceship appeared out of thin air, and many forces immediately discovered it. 2 of them immediately took action. U.S. military fighters. Tony's Iron Man armor. However, after Arno's figure appeared on the top of the spaceship, the U.S. military fighter turned around and clocked out and went back. And Tony landed in front of Arno in the Iron Man armor. The armor unfolded, and Tony came out and gave a big hug. After the two separated, Tony felt much more relaxed and said jokingly, "What an irresponsible person. As the head of the Stark family and the owner of such a large manor, he has been gone for more than a year." Something happened, but it has been more than a year. It seems that the time to go to other universes is equal to that here. Arno touched his chin and asked casually, "Let's not talk about this for now. Did Superstar tell us about Thanos? His strength has been greatly improved this time. It is time to deal with some threats in this universe, and Thanos is the first step." Tony was silent for a while after hearing this, and then he said with a strange look, "There is news, and Deadpool only used one sentence to interrogate Thanos' location a year ago. This is the method." Tony's hesitation made Arno curious. How did Wade interrogate him? "You know, Superstar is a psychic ability user, and ordinary torture is not enough. It probably won't have much effect on her, at least she won't be asked out with just one sentence." Tony was silent again for a while, organized his words, and slowly said, "He smeared the limbless Superstar with ticklers all over her body, and then told her that if she didn't cooperate, he would hollow out her internal organs and make A for Hulk. Arno, should I say he is worthy of being called Deadpool? This method makes him, who thinks he is ruthless, feel ashamed. This is just for the mean means and shamelessness. This 10 million annual salary is worth it. Even a huge profit. Tony has developed a certain resistance to this jerk, Deadpool. So he was not too surprised when he first heard Deadpool showing off his interrogation method. There was even a strange feeling that was unexpected but reasonable. So now when he talks about it again, except that it is a bit difficult to say, there is no other feeling. Tony no longer thought about Deadpool's face that deserved a beating even more than him. Instead, he looked at General Zod and others who appeared on the top of the spaceship with Arno with extraordinary momentum. He looked up and down at these dozen people who were more murderous than the most ferocious Middle Eastern bandits he had ever seen, and asked Arno with some curiosity, "Who is this Black Warrior? Did you bring him from another parallel universe of mine?" General Zod and others who had been silent all the time looked at Tony with some dissatisfaction. "What Black Warrior? They are the most powerful race in the universe, Kryptonians." Suddenly, a strong sense of oppression spread from Zod and others to Tony. Feeling the familiar strange pressure on his body, Tony seemed to know who they were, so he swallowed unconsciously. "This is the feeling of Arno's biological force field, right?" "Absolutely. So, these are more than a dozen Supermen. You can imagine that more than a dozen Supermen look at you expressionlessly. It's very stressful, little cat brother. Okay, stop teasing my poor brother, or he will rebel when he gets stressed. Kryptonian armor will come out." Arno waved to Zod and the others half-jokingly. Hearing that Tony was Arno's brother, Zod and the others did not feel the breath of the same race from Tony. But they still put away their hostility and stood respectfully behind Arno like a stone statue without moving. Arno's fingertips glowed yellow and tapped Tony's forehead. "As for their identities, it's a long story, you can see for yourself." In an instant, countless memory images appeared in Tony's mind in the third-person God's perspective. These are memories related to traveling to Tony's future universe and mistakenly entering the DC universe. Tony's brain is good, and it is strengthened by the extremis virus. So he didn't feel uncomfortable with the large number of images that suddenly flooded into his brain. Soon, he understood everything. But what shocked him first was not that Arno went to the outrageous DC universe. It was another one. "I have a daughter in the future." Tony opened his eyes wide and shouted in shock. Arno smiled faintly, and he knew that after Tony saw the memory picture, he must be most concerned about the little angel Morgan. "Yes, her name is Morgan, Morgan Stark, your child with Pepper." "Morgan, my daughter, she is so cute, Tony was a little incoherent, but then he became angry again. "Asshole, how dare I, who was in that universe, have a daughter and travel to other parallel universes at will?" Tony was furious. Although rationally speaking, he knew it in Arno's memory. In the future, Tony had to risk traveling to other parallel universes to borrow infinite gems in order to save the other half of the creatures that were annihilated in the universe. But emotionally speaking, Tony's behavior in the future was irresponsible to his daughter and Pepper. Will the future self understand if he did not borrow the gems in the parallel world and died accidentally? Without me, Stark Industries is a big cake, a cake that countless forces want to devour. Pepper and Morgan will be caught in this storm. Tony's face is not good. He swears that if he is in Tony's position in the future, unless Arno, Pepper, or Morgan are also annihilated, otherwise, he will never choose to take the risk of crossing. Instead, spend the rest of his life with their families in peace. Compared with the other half of the creatures in the universe, his family needs him more. He lost his parents when he was young and only had to rely on his brother, so he understood the importance of family. He has great love, but the premise is that he does not lose his family. Okay, Tony, don't think too much, he is not you, and you will not go to his step, so there is no need to blame him. Arno patted Tony on the shoulder and changed the topic that made Tony angry. Compared to the other parallel universe, aren't you surprised that the DC universe actually exists? Tony was successfully diverted from the topic, or rather he knew that as long as Arno was there, he would never reach the desperate situation of his self in another universe. Because he was different from his self in another universe, he had the confidence to be unbridled, unlike his self in another universe, who had to handle everything alone. So he quickly relaxed, stroking his chin with a calm expression. What's so surprising? They are also Kryptonians, and you accidentally went to the world of DC. Although Arno thought that Tony should not be too panicked about this, he did not expect him to be so calm. You don't seem to be surprised that the world in comics is real. Tony spread his hands and said nonchalantly. Strange, since you became the real Superman, I won't find anything weird happening in this world. Even if the true face of our world is like DC Comics, another version of comics, I don't think it's weird. After all, we are all real, right? We are a family, and everything we have will never change, isn't that enough? And rather than saying that the comic world has become reality, I believe that a real universe picture is projected into the brain of a writer, and it is just drawn. So, there is nothing weird about everything. Arno smiled, very satisfied with Tony's tenacious and free-spirited character. The reason why he told Tony the reality of the DC universe directly was because he believed in his brother's character. I believe that he will not be like a bald man who can't accept the fact that he may live in the so-called comic world and die directly. Now that you have figured it out, let's go back to the manor. I have a lot to do this time. Zod, you guys should stay in the manor for a few days. I'll take you to see the new home after I deal with a purple bald guy. When Arno mentioned the purple bald guy, he suddenly felt that there were quite a few bald guys around him, in all kinds of colors. What White Ancient One, Black Nick Fury, Purple Thanos, Blue Dr. Manhattan, Green Abomination, etc. Master, should our spaceship stay here or stay in outer space? Zod's words interrupted Arno's counting of the bald guys around him, and he slapped his forehead. Oh, I almost forgot if you didn't mention it. A blue light flashed in Arno's hand, and a large piece of green kryptonite appeared in his hand. This is the kryptonite used in the spacecraft to simulate the Kryptonian environment. When he first arrived at Zod and others' spacecraft, he did not feel uncomfortable like Lala because of the Kryptonian environment simulated by kryptonite. So he did not think of this so-called Superman killer. Arno looked at the krypton-emitting green light in his hand, felt the energy in his body that was not reduced at all, and his body that was not weak at all, and sneered. After many enhanced adventures, his life level is no longer afraid of kryptonite. To him, this is just an ordinary stone. Kryptonite, huh? He looked at Zod and others. What do you feel about kryptonite? Zod frowned when he felt some suppressed power in his body after approaching kryptonite at close range. The power brought to us by the yellow sun has been weakened, but it is not a big problem. Our own power is still there. Other Kryptonians also echoed, saying that they felt the same as General Zod. Arno nodded, and this result was not unexpected. Although Kryptonians do become stronger due to sunlight radiation, and even evolve non-physical attacks such as heat vision and freezing breath. But it does not mean that the power of Kryptonians comes from the sun. In fact, the density of Krypton is much greater than that of the Earth, and the physical strength of Kryptonians is also very strong, basically surpassing most races in the universe. Therefore, even without the enhancement of the sun, each of them is equivalent to a dexterous Hulk. It can even be said that even adult Kryptonians who have not been enhanced by the sun can beat the normal Hulk. After all, flexibility and skill are not on the same level. So kryptonite is the norm for Kryptonians, not a weakness. Even if Clark has never lived in Krypton, as long as he is given some time, I believe he can adapt to the influence of kryptonite. So that he will not lose his combat effectiveness directly and be picked up and hammered by a little bat. However, this kind of thing that is not good for Kryptonians should not appear in this universe. Crack! Arno crushed the kryptonite in his hand, and the powder dissipated in the wind. The only physical weakness of the Kryptonians dissipated in the air. My Krypton will no longer need kryptonite. Zod nodded in agreement. Although kryptonite is not completely restraining for them, it will have a certain suppressing effect. After Arno finished all this, he looked down at the sci-fi minimalist base next to the manor, which was not smaller than his manor. But, Tony, can you tell me what this building next to my manor is? This, the Justice League base. Tony answered as a matter of course. Arno slowly typed a question mark. Quote question mark quote. Tony continued to explain. Before the invasion of New York, when Bambi came to tip off. Didn't I mention that we were going to form a super league of our own? We named it the Justice League, didn't you agree at the time? Arno was speechless. I was speechless by the name at the time, and if you wanted to form it, why did you build the base next to my manor? Ahem, well, isn't it because we thought that when you're not around, we can easily support and protect your manor at any time? Tony was a little embarrassed and gave a reason that he didn't even believe. Arno just smiled and looked at his lying brother without saying a word. Under the majesty of his brother, Tony quickly raised his hands in surrender and said honestly. Okay, actually it's because it's built here that I and other members of the Alliance feel safe. Otherwise, if the world government knew that a group of superhumans were planning to form a super organization that is not under their control, they would definitely find all kinds of ways to make things difficult. And only here, it's a no man's land, no one dares to control it, so I built it here, and... Tony was a little embarrassed when he said this. Arno slightly closed his eyes, with a bad premonition. So what? It's nothing, I just formed the Justice League in your name. So now you are the leader of the Justice League, congratulations, there is another superpower, are you surprised? Tony turned into a fake smile boy, with a hint of smirk in his fake smile. Arno laughed angrily. So you not only built a base next to my house, but also found a bunch of hangars for me. Ahem, what do you mean hangars? The Justice League is full of elites. For example, Thor, Banner, Maximoff and his sister, Deadpool, Captain America, etc. are all the first members of the League. I'm still following up. Recruiting some superhumans with outstanding abilities, the Justice League will only become stronger in the future. And it is not completely without benefits for you. Look, this base is not smaller than your manor, right? But it didn't cost a penny. When the guys in Congress heard that you wanted to form an alliance, they gave us the land next to your manor as a base overnight. So, this is all your territory. Okay, very good, you are worthy of being my good brother Tony. I hope you can fly in time. Quote. Arno patted Tony's shoulder with a smile on his face, and before Tony understood what he meant, he put away the spaceship under his feet. Arno and other Kryptonians floated in the air. And Tony, who had removed his armor. With a whoosh, he fell directly from a height of several hundred meters. Although he was startled by Arno's little prank, Tony quickly calmed down. As he waved in the air, the steel armor that fell from the sky instantly disintegrated and flew towards him. This is the Mk-42 he just developed, which he affectionately called the Prodigal Son's armor. Oh, by the way, this is the second time he wore this armor, the first time was in the laboratory. As we all know, Tony likes to use it first and then test it when making armor. So Mk-42 has not been systematically tested in a strict sense. And as we all know, things that have not been rigorously tested are generally not very reliable. So Tony, it was terrible. It is true that the separate automatic wearing of the Wanderer is efficient and convenient. But the impact is also huge. Boom. Quote, thank you for the compliment, isn't it an advantage? The two chatted and walked towards the manor gate not far away. Neither of them took this little episode to heart, it was just a friendly game between the two brothers. The door was led by the red-dressed butler, and many maids had been waiting on both sides of the gate for a long time. Kaya's face, which had always been calm, showed a smile that could not be hidden. Master, welcome home. Arno also showed a gentle smile and walked towards Kaya in Tony's envious eyes. Then he raised his hand to Kaya's face, and then he grabbed the neck of a maid behind Kaya and lifted her up. Do you know, in the midst of a crowd of goodwill, your malice is as dazzling as a firefly in the dark night. Quote. Arno had a gentle smile on his face, and his cold eyes gradually turned platinum. The pretty maid was held in the air by the neck. In Arno's platinum pupils, there was an ugly creature with green skin. Although the others had some absolute trust in Arno, they did not quite understand what Arno meant. In Tony's armor scan and Kaya's telekinesis, no problems were found with the maid mentioned by Arno. Even under the perspective of other Kryptonians, this was just an ordinary person. But the other Kryptonians did not care, they were only loyal to Arno. Seeing Arno pick up one of the maids, their eyes all lit up with the iconic fiery red light and looked at the others. As if they would shoot anyone without hesitation if others dared to move. What a disgusting ability, even DNA can be perfectly replicated. Arno looked at the maid in his hand with disgust, and the power of the mind invaded her brain. The maid's eyes became dull in an instant, and her skin turned from white to green, from a human to a Skrull. Others in the manor, including Tony, were also shocked. Someone could actually switch people under their noses, and they hadn't discovered it yet. Tony looked unhappy. He would come here from time to time when Arno was away. He was afraid that someone or some force would take advantage of Arno's absence to do something bad to Arno's manor. He thought he had taken good care of Arno's manor before. But he had penetrated into the manor for who knows how long. This was a slap in the face. Tony couldn't help but step forward and carefully observe the green-skinned goblin who could escape the scan of his armor. Zod and other vigilant Kryptonians frowned when they saw that it was the Master's brother, but they didn't cut Tony in half. However, Fiora still stared at Tony, who was close to Arno. As long as he did something that was not good for the Master, she didn't care who Tony was. Kaya's already expressionless face became even colder. As the housekeeper of Stark Manor, someone actually sneaked in one day, but she didn't notice it, and took away one of their family members. This was simply her biggest dereliction of duty. Her eyes were cold, and her telekinesis spread out to cover all the maids, making them unable to move under the heavy pressure in the air. This was not only because she suspected that there were still transformed lurkers among them, but also to prevent them from moving around and being killed directly by Zod and others. She could feel that the murderous intentions of these people with similar abilities to the Master were no joke. Arno did not care about the ugly expressions of the people around him and the tense atmosphere. It was just that the power of the mind kept reading the memory of this Skrull. He soon understood her identity, the time and purpose of her infiltration. The identity was that disgusting Skrull, a stupid alien who could transform into any species. The infiltration time was in the past 6 months. While she was away, she sneaked into a shopping maid and replaced her identity. The purpose of lurking in the manor was very simple, to steal his DNA and copy his superpowers. According to the memory of this Skrull, now the Skrulls on Earth are divided into 2 factions. One faction is the conservatives led by Talos, who are full of hope for Nick Fury. They have been waiting for Black Egg and Aunt Marvel to find a new home for them, and they work illegally for Black Egg. As for the other faction, it is the militant faction led by Gravik, who has long been dissatisfied with Black Egg's promises. They are completely disappointed with Black Egg, who keeps making promises 3 years after 3 years, and there is no end to the 3 years. They plan to create their own new home. But they don't plan to find it with their own hands. Instead, they plan to take the Earth, a ready-made feng shui treasure land, for themselves and eliminate the natives on it. The premise for doing so is that they need to have enough confidence to fight against the whole world. They have now lurked in government departments of various countries, kidnapped and replaced senior personnel of various departments, and the regimes of the ordinary world can be overthrown in a single thought. But in the extraordinary world, they don't have enough strength yet. So this group of Skrulls of the fighting faction set their sights on the god of the Earth, the most popular and powerful human on Earth. Arno Stark. They created an evolution machine that can evolve ordinary Skrulls into super Skrulls. An evolutionary species that can not only change into anyone's appearance, but also copy the abilities of the copied person. But this also requires certain prerequisites. Unlike changing into other people, you only need to take a look. The ability to copy requires obtaining the genes of this person first. And the leader of the fighting faction, Gravik, is the first Super Skrull, so he set his sights on Arno's genes. As long as you have his genes, conquering the Earth is no longer a dream. Sigh, Arno laughed disdainfully when he saw this. Occupy the Earth and copy my abilities. Really, you don't know how to live or die. A look of cruelty appeared in Arno's eyes. As the power of the mind was withdrawn, the scroll in his hand woke up. Want my DNA? Here, can you bear it? Arno threw the scroll on the ground, and the power of space emerged from the fingertips of his right hand. With great force, he cut a small cut on his left palm. After a drop of red and gold blood flowed out, the wound healed instantly. Arno dripped that drop of blood directly on the forehead of the scroll on the ground. The scroll on the ground was ecstatic. This was the gene of the strongest person on Earth. However, before she could save Arno's blood, a burning sensation came from her forehead and soon spread throughout her body. Ah! Blood-red bubbles appeared on her green skin, and her muscles were rapidly melted by the high temperature. Then came the bones and internal organs, and finally the brain and heart, until the whole body turned into a pool of dark green sticky blood. And the blood also vaporized, leaving no trace before it ended. Watching the Skrulls turned into nothingness, disappearing more thoroughly than Thanos snapped his fingers, without even ashes left. Arno's eyes were full of ridicule and disdain, wanting my genes. Sorry, I locked them up a long time ago. After his life level rose, every cell in his body was integrated into his will control, and every cell out of the body exceeded 10,000 degrees high temperature. Even if you can get it, you must first be able to withstand this terrifying high temperature, and secondly, you must be able to resist your own will contained in the cells. Otherwise, even if you fuse your own cells, you will only become a puppet controlled by yourself. Oh, by the way, the power of that will must exceed the upper limit of his mental power to be released, that is, exceed the power of the Mind Stone. It is still an enhanced version of the Mind Gem. After all, its original stone is not the common stuff from other universes, but one that has been enhanced by someone. Arno doesn't think anyone has the power to remove his mind control. Because of this power, he doesn't look down on the power of a mere Superman. After all, many of his own abilities are not acquired by genetic replication. Rather, they are abilities that exist in his soul, such as the 3 Infinity Stones. Ahem, Sigma_Ka close corner bracket angle vomit, what kind of stench is this? Is it made of feces, so stinky? Tony next to him was not scared by Arno's means, but he was almost choked to death by the stench of the gasified Skrulls, and heaved on the side. Almost, but a species that is more disgusting than feces. The Skrulls are called Skrulls, and they are an alien race that can replicate anyone's DNA. Thus, they can completely become the replica's appearance from the inside out, and even have the replica's short-term memory. Quote. Tony's face changed after hearing this, and he immediately responded to the key question. Race. So this is not a superpower. How many Skrulls are there on Earth? He thought it was just a shapeshifter. After all, there are many people with all kinds of shapes and sizes. So he was angry when he knew it was a shapeshifter, but he wasn't very surprised. But it's different if it's a race. It's impossible for a race to have only this one person. A race that can perfectly replicate anyone is a terrible disaster for humans. Arno slowly looked at Tony and raised a finger. 10. Arno was unmoved and still raised his finger. 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. Tony asked 4 times in a row, and he shouted when he said 100,000, but he saw that his brother's face didn't change. He swallowed his dry throat and said in a trembling voice, "It won't be a million." Arno put away his finger and nodded mercilessly. 1 million. A whole 1 million. How did so many alien fools sneak into the Earth? Quote. Tony cursed after hearing this and realized the seriousness of the matter. It was not only serious, but also catastrophic. What does it mean that there are 1 million alien races that can transform into anyone lurking on the Earth? It is no exaggeration to say that they can even directly overthrow the regimes of all countries on the Earth and rule the Earth. And they can do all this without humans knowing it. They don't even have to do it themselves to make countries kill each other. Thinking of all this, Tony's forehead was covered with cold sweat, and he kept thinking about countermeasures with his invincible brain. Arno's eyes were also violent, but his tone was still calm. Why can they sneak into the earth so quietly? This is to ask our traitor, Black Egg. He helped those green monsters to the earth because of his stupid sympathy. Quote, Black Egg, are you talking about Nick Fury? I thought he was just black-faced, but his heart is so black. Is he Alzheimer's? Or is he also an alien, letting so many shapeshifting races hide on Earth? Is this something a human could come up with? I'm just. Tony's eyes widened, and he cursed, dragging out Nick Fury's ancestors who used to pick cotton and scolding him. Arno didn't comment on this. He didn't know whether Nick Fury had Alzheimer's or not. He traveled through time after Avengers 4, and although he knew something about the Skrulls, he didn't know there were so many Skrulls on Earth. It's okay in the Marvel universe where he didn't exist before, but now on my Earth, he dared to let so many Skrulls into his territory. That's really like promoting belief in God in a Buddhist temple, forcing the abbot to kill people. It's just over 1 million, don't worry, I can deal with it today. Quote. Arno's eyes were shining with platinum light as he looked around, but he was actually looking around the entire Earth, constantly locking onto his green-skinned babies. Every time he saw a Skrull, no matter if it was in a transformed state or in its original form, he would mentally mark them all. None of these green-skinned monkeys can escape. They were brothers, and Tony saw at a glance that Arno was going to do a big purge, and hurriedly said, Wait, I think we need to discuss it again. Arno frowned and looked at Tony, the light in his eyes converged, and he had already marked all the Skrulls. You want to stop me? It stands to reason that the Tony in this universe should not be so soft-hearted as he was taught by himself. Sure enough, the Tony in this universe is not so soft-hearted. He did not close the weapons department. While he is a hero, he is also a weapons dealer. Facing an alien race, you talk to a weapons dealer about kindness. Sorry, talk to his cannon. Stop you? Of course not. I mean, this incident is a good opportunity. I plan to let the entire Justice League participate. This is not only their first group battle, but also a test to see if there are any of them who are not worthy of staying in the Justice League. The Justice League represents justice, but it represents the justice of mankind, and does not need saintly fools. Tony's eyes are firm with a hint of cruelty. After hearing this, Arno silently relaxed his clenched fists. He was very satisfied with Tony's words. Just now, as long as Tony dared to say something pitiful about the Skrulls, he would give Tony a loving education and let him know that Jay Cho has a song called, Listen to Your Brother, Don't Let Yourself Get Hurt. Well, then do as you say. Go and gather the members of the Justice League. Tony shook his head and pointed at Arno. No, you go. You are the core of the Justice League, and you are the leader. It seems that you really intend to hang a few pendants for your brother. Okay, most of them are acquaintances anyway. Arno didn't have too many thoughts about the Justice League. He was neither happy nor impatient. For the Justice League, he felt that more of them would not be too much, and less of them would not be too much. Kia, take care of the house. I will take Kelly home soon. The replaced Manor maid. No, sir, please allow us to go with you. This is not only your business, but also a common business for me and everyone in the Manor. Kia, who always obeyed Arno's orders, said no to his orders for the first time. He looked at the angry eyes of Kia and the many maids behind her, was silent for 2 seconds, and nodded. Well, let them experience it. Otherwise, if you stay in the Manor for too long, you will easily become a caged bird with nothing to do but good looks. Come on, let's go vent your anger together and bring back our families. After Arno finished speaking, he put his hands behind his back and slowly flew towards the base of the Justice League. Tony took off first and followed by a dozen Kryptonians who had been guarding Arno. Finally, more than 100 maids from the Manor followed in an orderly manner. It seems that after this matter is over, it is time to arrange new extremis potions for them. Arno looked back at the many maids walking. In Tony's future world, he has transformed the extremis potion with the Mind Stone. It has many more functions, including flight and mental protection and alertness. This can enhance their strength while also adding a layer of danger prediction function. He called it an upgraded version of Peter. Although each such potion requires him to use the power of the Mind Stone to activate it, However, with the degree to which he and the Mind Stone have been completely integrated, he can completely strengthen a large number of extremist potions in batches. So for him, it is just a matter of convenience. The Justice League is next door, so Arno basically arrived as soon as he took off, and he and a group of Kryptonians were suspended in the air in the base square. Tony cleared his throat and turned on the armor's PA system. Avengers. No. Justice League assemble. How could he suddenly almost shout out Avengers assemble for no reason? How unlucky. He tooey. As the Stark brand loudspeaker resounded throughout the Justice League base. The first person to be called up was the old man guarding the base, Deadpool, who was sleeping like a red dead pig. Deadpool poked his red head out of the 100 square meter guardhouse. There was a pool of transparent sticky liquid on the mouth of the hood hanging on the table in the guardhouse. He touched his head in confusion. What? The Avengers are assembling. Have I traveled through time again? The final battle of Avengers 4 is about to begin. It's over. The boss is going to snap his fingers and die. Avengers, you big-headed ghost. We are attackers, not Avengers. And you are going to die. Get up, you useless goalkeeper. Tony came down and picked up Deadpool's head. The iron mask couldn't hide his disgusted face. He yelled at Deadpool with a disgusted tone. It was not easy to transfer Deadpool away from him, so that he could go to the toilet with peace of mind, instead of worrying about a red head suddenly popping out of the toilet halfway. He coaxed and deceived Deadpool to the Justice League base that he was interested in, but he still couldn't avoid the fate of being irritated by his mean mouth. Not only did he leave a bad impression on his eldest brother when he first came to the Justice League, but he also said that he snapped his fingers and was going to die. You are the one who is going to die. Besides, who the hell would die just because of a snap of fingers? Arno didn't care about Deadpool's humiliation. He would feel strange if this guy stopped being humiliating one day. He even suspected that something beyond the destruction of the universe was about to happen. As Deadpool was thrown out of the gate room by Tony, many members of the Justice League came out with their own skills. Quicksilver, Pietro, arrived instantly with a silver afterimage. Scarlet Witch, Wanda, flew into Arno's arms with her hands shining red. Thunder flashed, Thor fell from the sky. War Machine, Rod, flew in black fully armed armor. Falcon, Sam, wearing a flying wing suit. Finally, the four-man team walked out side by side. Captain America Steve Rogers, Black Widow Natasha Romanoff, Hawkeye Clint Barton, and Hulk Bruce Banner. The first generation of members has officially been confirmed to be 11, including Tony and Deadpool. Of course, including the nominal leader Arno, that's 12. Not too many, but not too few, almost twice as many as the first generation of Avengers. Arno held Wanda in his arms and looked at the people below with satisfaction. Well, not bad, all very energetic. They were all familiar faces, some of whom I had never seen before, but I had seen them on the big screen in my previous life. These people are generally trustworthy and have their own strengths. Of course, he had also seen that there were no members of the Justice League who had been replaced by the Skrulls, including the two insiders. After all the members of the Justice League came out, they all looked at the tall figure in the air that made people feel safe at a glance. Of course, the premise is that you are on his side, otherwise you will not feel a sense of security. The people had various emotions in their eyes towards the person in the sky, including worship, respect, admiration and other positive emotions. After all, this is Arno Stark, the most popular god on Earth, the Superman who saves the world, whose fame in the Battle of New York is even greater than that of Tony and Thor combined. Although Arno feels that his popularity is similar to that of the DC Comics Superman of Moisture. But it does not prevent him from being recognized as the strongest superhero on Earth now. Let's not talk nonsense. The next is the first group action of the Justice League and everyone in the Manor. I will send you the information, and those who are unwilling to execute it will withdraw from the action and voluntarily withdraw from the Justice League. Then he used the power of the mind to transmit the information of the Skrulls to the minds of every member of the Justice League. And the purpose of the Skrulls infiltrating the top level of various countries, intending to subvert the world pattern, provoke the Third World War, and occupy the Earth was transmitted to their minds. And it was explained that this was a cleansing operation, and the killings caused were in units of 10,000. Again, there is no need for a saint in his team. If you don't want your hands to be stained with the enemy's blood, then roll back to your mother's bed and hide. Wait for the enemy to become your mother's appearance and chop off your head, and your hands will be stained with the blood of your relatives. The last sentence of Arno's teleportation is this one. Wow, so interesting. I want to join, I want to join. This is so interesting, isn't this the much anticipated Deadpool slaughtering the Marvel Universe? Deadpool was so excited that he jumped up and down, but before he finished speaking, he felt a deadly sight coming from the sky. Seeing Arno looking at him with a kind face, he almost forgot that he was not the only one who broke the dimensional wall, and quickly changed his words with a serious face. The low-profile version, Deadpool slaughters the Skrulls in the Marvel Universe, cough cough. Seeing that Deadpool stopped having an attack, Arno ignored him and looked at other members. Now, tell me your decision, and those who don't want to leave now. He looked down with indifference, waiting for their decision, not caring whether they would refuse and destroy his plan to slaughter the Skrulls. Because after today, the Skrulls will no longer exist, and no one can stop them. And the mental mark on the Skrulls will never disappear, and they have nowhere to escape, only destruction. He didn't intend to leave them alive and raise a tiger for trouble. Other races can, but not the Skrulls. Pietro was the first to nod his head in agreement, even though he was a famous superhero who was often active on the streets of New York. But as long as it was an order from Arno, he would do it unconditionally even if he was asked to assassinate the president, not to mention an alien race. Chapter 91. Next, Natasha and Barton nodded together. As former agents, they knew more clearly how great a disaster this creature would cause if it stayed on Earth. The next person who nodded surprised Arno. It was Captain America, Steve Rogers. The others looked at him in surprise. Although Steve's expression was not very good, he still said in a low voice with a firm look. If this race just wants a place to survive, it's fine. But they sneaked into humans and planned to provoke World War III, so I will never allow it. This is the Earth of humans, not theirs. Arno was a little surprised, but felt it was reasonable. Although I haven't seen Captain America's personal movie, I know from the Avengers movie that a veteran who participated in World War II can't be a pure kind person. Thor's hammer, you say, right. His kindness is limited, or divided by race. Especially in the distinction between human race and alien race, he will certainly choose the human race without hesitation. This is much better than the director who should be picking cotton in the field. Others also nodded in agreement with the captain's opinion. After listening, Rhodes and Sam also agreed with the cleansing operation. In the end, only Banner was silent, and everyone looked at him. Banner spread his hands helplessly and sighed. I am just an ordinary scientist with 7 doctoral degrees. I am really not suitable for this bloody genocide. But he changed his tone. However, Hulk should like it, so I'll let Hulk do it. As he said, green veins appeared on Banner's face, and he turned to Hulk at a rapid speed. Now that Thor hates and the anti-Hulk armor often spar with Hulk, Hulk is no longer so irritable. Banner can also have simple exchanges with Hulk and let Hulk come out to play from time to time. Hulk, with a loud roar, Arno's mental power covered everyone present, and temporarily blessed them with the power of the mind, so that they know the coordinates of the Skrulls they are responsible for, and the eyes of the mind that can see through the true body of the Skrulls. With the blessing of the power of the mind, the pupils of everyone's eyes lit up with yellow light, and they felt their brains were refreshed as never before. Seeing that everyone was ready, Arno waved his hand. Then this, clean ball, operation begins. Next, everyone formed teams according to the teams divided by the power of the mind in their brains. There were 3 teams in total. One team was led by Tony, and Thor, Natasha, Hawkeye, and Pietro went to eliminate the Skrulls in the combat departments such as S.H.I.E.L.D. and the military. One team was led by Captain America, and led Rhodes, Sam, and Wanda to clean up the Skrulls who transformed into major government officials. The last team was led by General Zod, and led most of the members such as Deadpool, Hulk, and Kia to go to the gathering place of the Skrulls to start the cleansing. Of course, except for the last team, he arranged 2 Kryptonians and 30 maids from the 3rd team to act together in the other 2 teams. The remaining Kryptonians and all the maids were in the last team. Arno himself did not plan to go with them. No need, he could handle it all in 10 minutes, so he left it to others to practice their character, as there would be many alien invasions in the future. He would monitor everyone's actions at the Justice League base and not let go of any Skrull creature. The people were divided into 3 teams, and after they were divided into teams by telepathy, they immediately set off. Before leaving, Steve, who was in charge of the second team, paused and said sincerely to Arno, who was still standing in the air with his hands behind his back. "Thank you." Arno glanced at him and did not reply. Captain America did not wait for Arno to answer, got on an off-road vehicle, and sped away. Of course Arno knew what he was thanking him for, but he disdained to pay attention. Because it was not for him, it was just a reasonable distribution according to everyone's personality. He understood that although Steve agreed to attack the Skrulls, he would definitely feel reluctant and difficult to do it if he really attacked Skrull civilians. The same goes for Tony, Wanda and others. So he arranged for them to deal with the Skrulls lurking in various countries, and they would not have any psychological burden in dealing with them. And a ruthless person like General Zod and a guy like Deadpool who has no bottom line are very suitable to be the executioner. They don't care about men, women, old or young, in their eyes, all beings are equal. And Hulk, forget it, it's better not to say anything about this guy. As the teams either assassinated or violently attacked, the 3 teams with the mind coordinates and the true eye were all operating smoothly. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. After knowing that the cleanup team was sent by Arno, Pierce even asked the S.H.I.E.L.D. Special Forces to join the cleansing operation. As for the government officials replaced by the Skrulls in various countries, Steve and others were not polite and directly killed them first and reported later, which was a special need for Superman. Under Steve's orderly arrangement, the cleanup operation was carried out very quickly, faster than Tony's team. After all, our Captain America is very familiar with going to other countries to eliminate high-level elements. Don't you think so, Red Skull? As for the third team, as the strongest team, although there are hundreds of thousands of Skrulls in the Skrull gathering place. But for a dozen Kryptonians and hundreds of super-powered subordinates, it was a massacre. But accidents always come when you least expect it. The massacre team among the 3 teams, with a face full of green blood, suddenly appeared in front of Deadpool, who was killing excitedly an orange cube light door. Deadpool was stunned. Before he could react, a stick with an orange light on the head quickly stretched out and stabbed his nipples. In an instant, Deadpool quickly turned into a colorful shadow from the part that was touched and disappeared. Arno, who was telepathically sensing everyone, frowned. Before he could go over, the light gate had disappeared, as if he had been prepared for him. Arno closed his eyes and radiated his mind, but he could not sense Deadpool's existence at all. You must know that as long as he is marked by his current telepathy, even if he hides at the ends of the earth, as long as he is still in this universe, he cannot escape his induction. Now that Deadpool's mental coordinates have completely disappeared, there are only 2 possibilities. That is, Deadpool no longer exists in this universe, or that one was killed directly and turned into ashes. Arno is more inclined to the former. After all, he has been a scourge for thousands of years, and he does not believe that Deadpool will die so easily. Although Wade is a mean person, if you dare to touch my people, you are looking for death. Arno was about to go to the scene to capture the remaining space fluctuations, intending to catch an adulterer across the universe. A green light gate appeared in front of Arno, and then covered him directly at a speed that he didn't have time to react, and instantly took Arno away from this universe. Ah! With a long scream, Deadpool fell from the sky and landed in a piece of yellow sand. Swoosh, puff. This is very unlucky. What's even more unlucky is that he landed on his head. With an ostrich-eating shit posture with his butt sticking out, his whole head fell into the yellow sand. Deadpool twisted his big red butt, supported the yellow sand with both hands, and kept exerting force. Beer. Finally, with a crisp sound, Deadpool successfully pulled out his head. And the price was just a minor injury of breaking his cervical vertebrae when pulling it out. At least for him, this is not a skin injury. After all, the skin is still connected to the neck. What a cold joke. Ah, bah, bah. Who sneak attacked me? Deadpool pulled off the hood on his head that was covered with yellow sand and the green blood of the Skrulls, with an angry face. But the anger didn't last long on his face, and his expression turned horrified again. Oh thank you. Barbecue is coming. 100 meters ahead, a black mist-like monster with red eyes and a huge mouth was rushing towards him. And with the speed and distance of the monster, he had no place to hide. At the critical moment, another portal appeared behind him, just like the orange cube that attacked him, and stretched out two hands from it to grab his shoulders, pulled Wade in directly, and quickly closed it. The next moment, the black mist-like monster whizzed past. Almost, Wade was swallowed by the black mist. Yummy, yummy. Don't eat me, I just pooped my pants, it's smelly, not delicious. Wade hugged his chest and covered his eyes with his hands, closed his eyes tightly, and had a shy expression on his face that was reluctant to refuse. The expressions of the staff of the Time Administration. P_PXN. Mr. Wade Winston Wilson, please don't panic, you are safe. A man in a gray suit with a strong broadcasting voice slowly walked out from behind Wade. Hearing the voice behind him, Wade dared to open his eyes from between his fingers. After seeing that he was safe, Wade's eyes unscrupulously scanned the retro equipment around him, and finally fixed his eyes on the man in a suit beside him. Are you deliberately using this disgusting broadcast bubble voice to talk to me? Are you trying to pick me up? You should know that I only use this magnetic bubble voice when I'm trying to pick up girls in the bar. But I'm not gay, at least not now. I may have been gay before when I was short of money, you know. Living with a blind old woman also requires paying rent, and that was a wonderful but painful time. But unfortunately, I'm financially free now, so you can't pick me up. The man in the suit opened his mouth, and Wade's mouth was so annoying that his CPU was fuming, and it took him a long time to recover. I'm not gay either, and I didn't deliberately use bubble voice, this is my original voice. Wade's attitude suddenly changed to expressionless, with his hands behind his back with an indifferent look. His whole aura became steady and suppressed, as if the funny guy just now was not him. Oh, I see. Then tell me your name and what's going on now. Shocked by Wade's indifferent eyes and the sudden change of his oppressive aura, the man in the suit couldn't help but report. Oh, I'm Mr. Paradox. This is one of the departments of the TVA Time Management Bureau. I asked someone to bring you here because Mr. Paradox felt something was wrong and stopped. Wait, Wade is not his boss, why should he report the situation to this fool? Wade saw that Mr. Paradox had reacted, and his indifferent expression on his face returned to lively. I have to say that the aura of the big boss Arno is really intimidating. I just stole a few points, and I almost said my pants out of this guy with a stupid name like Mr. Paradox. Time Management Bureau, wow, that must be Elliot in Loki 1, so cool. Mr. Paradox had an unnatural look on his face when he heard the name Loki, but he quickly covered it up. Okay, now that I've visited your clown zoo and seen the black fog animals inside, please send me back. After all, you may not know that I have signed my indenture to a manor owner and am now his slave. If he finds out that I'm absent from work to play in your zoo while cleaning up the green toilet poop, the consequences will be very serious. Hearing the name of the manor owner, Mr. Paradox shuddered. However, don't get me wrong, his ancestors were not caught to collect some white substance. But he knew very well who the owner of the manor Wade was talking about was. He understood the horror of that guy, and even more so the horror of the person behind that guy. That was not someone he could offend. That's why he went to so much trouble to first teleport Deadpool to the void, and then bring him from the void. Mr. Wilson, before I send you back, I think you have to understand why I would take the risk of bringing you to the Time Administration. Wade caught the key words, and when he heard that Mr. Paradox could send him back, he felt confident and patted him on the shoulder. Shalbei, I guess you brought me to this Time Management Bureau because I used the time travel device with an electric lock. But that thing exploded after it accidentally sent me to another world. It's gone. It also broke my kidneys at the time. So listen to my advice and let it go. Faced with Wade who was talking to him in an elder's tone, Mr. Paradox slapped Wade's hand away. He pointed to the many old screens in front of him, and suddenly many pictures of Wade using the time travel device appeared. The screen in the middle showed the last time Wade used the time travel device after Vanessa broke up with Wade, who was heartbroken. First of all, we all know that you didn't use the time traveler accidentally. You used it many times, and finally, after your girlfriend dumped you, you gave up and randomly teleported to another universe. Secondly, although you did use the time traveler illegally, I didn't ask you to come here for this reason. Wade looked at the screen that monitored his every move in the past, and finally looked at Vanessa blankly, with a somewhat lonely expression. But who is he? He is Deadpool, and he quickly regained his cynical expression. Shit, you have to understand that it wasn't Vanessa who dumped me, it was us who dumped each other. Also, since it's not because of this, then what the hell are you talking to me about? Send it back before I get completely angry. After saying this, Wade didn't wait for Mr. Paradox to reply, and directly touched him up and down, searching his body, trying to find the time traveler on him that could send him back. Mr. Paradox ignored the two hands that were groping him, and said slowly, I can take you back, but your universe is dying, are you sure? Wade, what did you say dying? Say it again. Sure enough, Wade, who was acting as an investigator, was stunned at first. Then he grabbed Mr. Paradox's collar angrily and stared at him closely. How close was it? It was basically forehead to forehead, and their mouths were less than 1 centimeter apart. Mr. Paradox could even smell the chive pancake that Wade had for breakfast. At this moment, his serious face finally couldn't hold it anymore, and he pushed Wade away. God, I should be thankful that your face is no longer the rotten face of a Shar-Pei dog roasted by fire. Otherwise I swear, I will really spit on your face if we are so close. Wade pulled out the long knife from his back and put it on Mr. Paradox's neck, saying viciously, Don't talk nonsense to me, you dead sissy broadcaster. Explain to me what my universe is dying means. Otherwise I will chop off your head and use it as Hulk's chamber pot. Mr. Paradox did not change his expression and calmly pushed the long knife on his neck with 2 fingers. You may not know that there must be a point-drawing person in every universe in the multiverse. And your universe, World X, Universe 10,005, its point-drawing person disappeared, so it will gradually die out. Wade patted his head. Wait, let me think about it. You mean, a person named Diane died in my universe. So the whole universe must die with him, is that right? Mr. Paradox gave Wade a thumbs up and praised him. Yes, absolutely correct. Mr. Wilson seems to accept it quickly. Yeah, your mother's head. Are you sick? Just because of a so-called point-drawing person, the entire universe is going to be eliminated. Facing Wade's anger, Mr. Paradox said indifferently. Sorry, this is not something we can decide, the rules are like this. Wade was about to kill this guy with a knife, and suddenly got to a key point. Rules. Wait, I understand. What you just said is that the person who draws the points of my universe disappeared, not died. Could it be that I am actually the person who draws the points, and because of my departure, the entire universe is heading for extinction? Mr. Paradox was speechless by Wade's inexplicable confidence. He pointed to the screen in front of him, and an old man with a pierced chest suddenly appeared on the screen. You are not the person who draws the points, he is the person who draws the points of the 10th world, Wolverine, Logan. Wade looked at the dead man on the screen and felt that the sky had fallen. Alashette, why is it this Twilight Wolf and not me? Am I not more handsome and manly than him? Let this old guy who will die with emotion be the point, it would be strange if my universe does not perish. This is not something I can decide, this is fate. Wade listened to Mr. Paradox's cold words, but did not give up hope, but filled in his own mind. Wait a minute, since Logan is dead and the universe is about to perish, there must be a reason why you called me here. Is it? Oh my God, I am the savior. I am the savior of the X-Men. Mr. Paradox became completely impatient with his inexplicable confidence one after another, and stopped beating around the bush with Wade and directly cut off his hope. I brought you here not because you are some shitty savior, nor are you a point-drawing person. That person can only be Logan. I brought you here because of the rules. I give you 2 choices. First, I will send you back to your manor owner's world to continue to be a slave. I have no right to interfere with that world. You can enjoy your old age in that world. Second, I will send you back to your original 10,005 universe that is about to die, and greet death with your 10th world. Just like that, make a choice. With hope shattered, Wade calmed down. How much time does my universe have? Mr. Paradox glanced at his watch and replied lightly. It should take about a few thousand years for natural extinction at a normal flow rate. Wade, thousands of years? Are you kidding me? Thousands of years is nothing. In thousands of years, the Marvel Universe has been destroyed and restarted countless times. I don't care about that. However, before Wade could be happy about thousands of years, Mr. Paradox poured cold water on him again. But two don't plan to follow the normal flow rate, that's too slow. A universe that should have perished, I actually have to wait for thousands of years. Is this reasonable? No, this is unreasonable. So I'm going to use the time-tearing machine to eliminate it in advance. In 24 hours, it will be permanently destroyed. Quote. His eyes were a little crazy. This was the TVA way of doing things, the way Kong Zai Shi did it, not the bullshit way of waiting for the universe to die naturally like the new king. These words simply made Wade's anger max out, although he escaped from the 10th world because of Vanessa's breakup. But this does not mean that he doesn't care about that world anymore, he still has many friends in that universe. Shirley, Peter, the blind old woman and other people he cares about. Wade rushed forward and grabbed Mr. Paradox's clothes with one hand, and with the other hand he was about to draw a knife and chop him into pieces. But a group of TVA fighters holding orange light sticks suddenly appeared behind Mr. Paradox and surrounded him. Seeing this, Wade was very sincere, and his anger turned into a smile. He smoothed Mr. Paradox's wrinkled clothes. You said you two, we are on a private date, why do you bring so many assistants, isn't this destroying the romantic atmosphere? A trace of disdain appeared in Mr. Paradox's eyes. Humph, you are a man of insight. Quote. Wade took 2 steps back with a smile on his face, and took out his hood covered with green blood and sand from somewhere and put it on. The blood flowed through the eyes and corners of the hood, making Deadpool look a little hideous. Mr. Paradox suddenly had a bad premonition, and just as he was about to speak, a foot suddenly kicked him hard in the crotch. Surprised. Still want to destroy my world? No way. My world, I will save it, whether you like it or not. Deadpool's voice became a little low and came out of the mask, and he took out a time traveler. Mr. Paradox's pupils shrank, that was his time traveler. He covered his endured the severe pain and stood up, angrily yelling to the TVA fighters who felt the same way. What are you looking at? Stop him for me. Quote. But it was too late. By the time the TVA fighters rushed over, Deadpool had already pressed the time traveler in his hand and disappeared. The pain from Deadpool's last kick completely broke Mr. Paradox's defense, and he shouted angrily. Go and get him back. I'm going to send him to the void, the special universe, I don't care. No matter how strong that guy is, he can't come to TVA to do me. Can't, that's not necessarily true. Countless different parallel universes flashed through Arno's eyes. Modern, ancient, cyber, zombie, hell and countless other parallel universes passed into his eyes. In the end, his dark pupils were filled with a deep green. That was a world tree woven by countless green lines. What a beautiful and stunning sight. Arno crossed his arms and let his body drift slowly towards the world tree, without resistance or fear. He just calmly appreciated the beauty of the green world tree filled with colorful nebulae. His body kept moving forward until his entire body was completely integrated into the world tree and entered a new realm. This is. Arno looked at the green lines composed of countless timelines and already knew the answer. The center of the multiverse, the end of time. As if sensing something, he looked up at the steps in front of him, the lofty figure that he could never see clearly before. This time, his face gradually became clear. Hey! Arno chuckled, without much surprise in his eyes, but more of relief. He walked slowly in the gaps between countless green lines with his hands behind his back, just like walking in his own manner. Every time he took a step, the green lines around him would automatically avoid him and make way for him. He looked around at the green lines and the chaotic green mist with pure appreciation. His mood did not fluctuate at all, just like looking at the flowers and plants in his own manner. Although this chaotic green was not the place where he was when he first crossed over. No wonder, I feel so familiar here. The first time I was brought to this world was here, right? The one who brought me to this world, Loki. Arno walked to the bottom of the steps, slowly raised his head, and looked at the completely clear figure. The new king who was eternally lonely on the throne, the god of stories, Loki. Arno, long time no see. Loki, wearing the golden horned Asgard crown and sitting on the gilded throne, raised his fingers lightly. A transparent step rose from the ground under Arno's feet, raising him to the same height as himself. If Odin saw your current achievements, I really don't know whether he should be relieved or distressed. Arno looked at Loki, who was entangled by countless green timelines and firmly tied to the throne, with an inexplicable expression. Unprecedented power, endless cage. Father will understand. For Asgard, for all the people I love, no matter what the price of sitting on this position is, I must sit here. Loki's tone was light, but his eyes couldn't help but reveal a desire for freedom. No matter how powerful he is now, he can only watch from the perspective of a bystander, and he can never leave this place to change it personally. Is that so? So you used your private power to create a parallel branch universe that didn't exist originally, right? Facing Arno's questioning but willing tone, Loki did not refute and directly acquiesced. Arno didn't care whether he answered or not, but directly held the other end of the timeline that Loki held in his right hand. Suddenly, a platinum light appeared in his eyes, and he saw everything in that timeline. That was exactly what was happening in Arno's universe. With a thought, the screen came to the Earth at this moment. Opening critical hit. As soon as the screen cut to the Earth, a black boiled egg flew out. That was Nick Fury, who questioned Tony's actions and was knocked out 20 meters by Tony's iron fist and fainted directly. At the same time, there was also a female prime minister of a certain country who was replaced by the Skrulls and was beheaded neatly by Steve's shield. Finally, there was the Skrull gathering place, with a dozen or so gods floating in the sky, with red light constantly shooting out of their eyes. This was all the Skrull elimination plan happening on his Earth. Arno looked at the Skrulls who were almost eliminated and nodded slightly with satisfaction. Well, it's not bad. The first batch of Alliance members have passed the test for now. Loki had no sympathy for the slaughtered Skrulls. Instead, he chuckled and agreed. Hee, they did a good job, but the most important thing is that you are here. In the future when you don't exist, there are many parallel universes that will cause a lot of trouble on Earth. He was very satisfied with Arno's handling of the Skrulls. He was worthy of being the chosen one he carefully selected. These garbage should become nutrients for the soil of the Nine Realms, not borers of the Nine Realms. You should know that he is not only the god of stories in the multiverse, but also the third prince of Asgard. One of the heirs to the throne of the controller of the Nine Realms, the god of trickery, Loki Odinson. These green monkeys are trying to control Midgard, one of the Nine Realms, right in front of him. He did not wipe out all the Skrulls in the multiverse from the root, which was already a kind and conservative person after he had experienced many things, rules. If it were my old self, these guys would have died 800 times. But they wouldn't be much better now. Loki looked at his most proud story with a smile. A god on Earth who doesn't exist in the Marvel universe, the chosen one he brought from another world. Arno Stark. His traces will never be limited to a simple parallel universe, and the fate of the Skrulls will not be limited to the current universe. Arno noticed Loki's unreserved admiring eyes, but didn't care. He took a last look at the BB machine that Black Salted Egg woke up and took out with gritted teeth in the timeline, sneered at it, and put down the timeline in his hand. Nick Fury's biggest trump card. Captain Marvel. No, it should be called Captain Skrull. Carol Danvers. Of course he knew about this woman. A woman who still wanted to be a great interstellar philanthropist at the moment of crisis on Earth. Strongest person who always appears at the last minute and actually plays no role. Forget waiting for Carol to come back now. Zod and his men would have already wiped out the Skrulls and scattered their ashes. Even if she could arrive in time, more than a dozen Kryptonians would be able to beat the shit out of her and stuff it back into her. The strongest person in the world. Sorry, I have more than a dozen such people under my command. And even if the Kryptonians under his command don't take action, Hulk and Thor are enough to surprise Auntie. So Arno doesn't care whether Nick Fury will call his biggest trump card Carol. He cares more about the purpose of the person in front of him bringing him here this time. Tell me, what is the purpose of bringing me here today, the system master who brought me to this world? First of all, I'm not your system, I just wrote a story that didn't exist before. Loki smiled faintly and raised his second finger. Secondly, I brought you here for two reasons. One is to thank you for taking care of my useless brother and making Asgard more glorious. The other is that I want to ask you for a favor that concerns the fate of the entire multiverse. Arno accepted Loki's thanks for taking care of Thor in Asgard calmly without commenting. After all, Thor had indeed been eating and drinking with him for several years. Arno also often gave Thor instructions, allowing Thor to gradually use the power of Thor without Thor's hammer. In fact, he was itching to beat Thor with Thor's hammer from time to time, so that Thor had no hammer to use and could only be forced to stimulate his own power of Thor. But the result was undoubtedly good, at least Odin was very satisfied. And after Asgard brought Zod and others back from the DC universe, he was indeed ready to accept Odin's entrustment and accept Asgard. And merge Asgard and New Krypton into a new Kryptonian kingdom. This is destined to make Asgard more glorious and powerful. So Arno accepted Loki's thanks as a matter of course. There is no need to say more about gratitude, we are mutually beneficial. Loki changed the tragic fate of Asgard and Thor, and Arno gained supreme power and authority. This is a win-win situation. Let's talk about the second thing. What do I need to do for the fate of the multiverse? Arno did not ask for the reward because Loki had already given it last time. The Infinity Stones that Loki had given to him, which still had infinite power even when separated from the main universe and even the Marvel universe. Loki smiled slightly and did not move, but a translucent picture gradually emerged in front of Arno. It was an irregular line that spread out like a branch. This is the sacred timeline, and countless parallel universe timelines, including the universe you are in. At the end of his speech, Loki lowered his head slightly and looked at the branch line belonging to Arno's universe on his right hand. This is the branch line he created that is most similar to his original universe and the sacred timeline. This branch line will be more perfect than any other timeline, and both people and stories will have a perfect ending. This is the story he wrote. He does not allow anyone to destroy it. So he gave this universe the greatest gift and guarantee. Loki shook his head slightly and continued. Someone in the time administration I took over intends to violate the new rules I set and handle things in the way of the old master. A man in a suit and tie appeared in front of Arno. Not only that, he also joined forces with the abandoned people in the void to do things that are not in line with my rules. And in the end, he will push the multiverse to the brink of destruction. The scene turned again, showing a bald woman inserting her hands into the time-tearing machine, intending to destroy the entire multiverse. So you plan to let me stop them? Even if you can't do this kind of trivial matter yourself, you have no subordinates in the time administration. Arno was a little confused about this. Doesn't the time administration have other powerful forces besides Loki? Alas, dear sighs, I can't easily interfere in anything in my current state, and my subordinates. Loki's eyes flashed with helplessness. The affairs of the time administration are very complicated, and they are not as powerful as you think. Although they are trustworthy, their abilities are limited. When facing Omega-level mutants, they cannot be 100% perfect, and mistakes are inevitable. And the most important thing is, Loki looked at Arno's eyes, his peaceful eyes flashed a hint of cruelty. I prefer your methods. I need you to use your methods to let them know that the old master is gone, and the rules of the new king are the eternal rules that must be followed. Loki's voice fell, and a dark green portal appeared behind Arno. In my way. Okay, then sit on your lonely throne and watch. Not only this matter, but all the things in my universe, I will solve them perfectly. Arno raised an arc at the corner of his mouth, turned around and walked into the portal without looking back. You will not regret bringing me here, and the universe you created. Loki silently watched Arno enter the portal, and fell into the endless silence at the end of time again, and slowly spoke. I never regretted it. Deadpool lay beside the collapsed and dilapidated Fox logo, staring blankly at the tall figure in front of him that blocked the sunlight. Clang! 6 sharp claws shining with cold light stretched out from the tall figure's hands. The battle was about to start. Stop! With a finger stretched out, Deadpool stopped the upcoming fight. Wait, before the fight starts, let's quickly review what happened to me while our boss was in love with the mummy. Swish swish swish, after a flashback, the time stopped at the moment when Deadpool kicked Mr. Paradox and ran away with the time teleporter. In Deadpool's opinion, since Logan is the person who draws the dots of the X universe, why not just find Logan? He doesn't believe that Logan, who has the same healing factor as him and is immortal, will die so easily. So he embarked on his first journey to save the universe. That is, digging graves. 10 minutes later, Deadpool looked at the dug-out adamantium skeleton and let out a deafening sound of birds and flowers. At this time, the TVA fighters who came to arrest him appeared. Deadpool, who was angry and his whole body was flowing with the red light of the extremis virus, turned his head and looked at them. Under the lava flow, the mask as scary as a demon showed a terrifying smile. Don't ask why the mask doesn't burn. Deadpool directly pulled out the spine of Logan's adamantium skeleton in his hand and enchanted it. Suddenly, a ball of blazing flames exploded on the spine, dyeing half the sky red. Next is massacre. The angry Deadpool held Logan's spine, just like holding the hand of a longtime comrade in arms. At this moment, he and Logan's mind are one. In the terrified eyes of a group of TVA fighters, he pounced on him. A few minutes later, the charred limbs and arms were scattered all over the ground. Deadpool was covered in blood, but he was unscathed. A group of ordinary people, holding a stick that can exile people to the land of nothingness, want to take down the enhanced version of Deadpool. Ha, don't be funny. Saint Seiya will never be defeated by the same trick. Even if I don't have the ability of the extremis virus, killing you is like abusing dogs. Deadpool buried the adamantium head back in the soil, broke the blackened spine into 2 pieces, and inserted them crosswise into the ground as Logan's tombstone. I will miss your wolf uncle. Our combination skills are perfect, but I have to go save our universe first, so I can't have a deeper discussion with you. See you later, my baby, boo. After Deadpool blew a kiss, he did not despair because the old wolf of this universe was completely dead, nor did he panic because of the pursuit of TVA. He resolutely started the time traveler again and embarked on a journey to find Logan. Then, he was stabbed by Dwarf Wolverine, One-Eyed Wolverine, Apocalypse Wolverine, Superman Wolverine, Arthur Wolverine, Classic Suit Wolverine, Hulk, Corpse Wolverine, etc., and torn to pieces in various cruel ways that are not suitable for children. After many twists and turns, and being stabbed by various Wolverines, he finally found a soft persimmon, ahem. Slip of the tongue, he found the most perfect Wolverine, commonly known as the drunkard wolf. Then let's fast forward the plot, X3. Basically, he brought this drunkard Logan back to the Time Administration, wanting him to replace the Wolverine of his universe as the point drawer, so as to save his universe. But Mr. Paradox told him mercilessly, this Wolverine is not only not the best Wolverine, but also the worst of the worst, a Wolverine who has failed the whole world. What he has failed are not only the mutants in his world, but also the ordinary people in that world. A Wolverine with countless blood on his hands. And the Wolverine of the 10,005 universe is irreplaceable, so even if Deadpool brings this drunkard wolf back to his universe, it will be useless. The point drawer is dead. The universe will perish if it should. And Mr. Paradox still had a grudge against Deadpool for kicking him. So while Deadpool was devastated by the news, he winked. Suddenly, a dozen TVA fighters sneaked around and stabbed the devastated Deadpool and the drunken Logan in the ass. So of course, they were exiled to the void. Time goes back to the present. After Logan, who was tricked by Deadpool, woke up, he stretched out his claws in anger, and the battle was really about to start. Swish. As Logan's claws entered the flesh, the title, Deadpool and Wolverine officially fired the first shot. How bloody is the battle between the two undead? I won't go into the details of the process, I can only say that the parents of the children watched it and asked the theater to remove it from the shelves overnight. That was really blood splattering. You stab my kidneys, I stab your soft balls. You give me a few claws, I give you a few knives. A piece of your flesh was cut off by the long knife, and one of my hands was cut off by the sharp claws. Oh, what a shame. The final result is that Logan and the enhanced version of Deadpool, who have experienced the bloody massacre, are both injured. 2 long knives and several small knives are stuck in Logan's body, and there are several deep wounds on his body that can see the adamantium bones. Deadpool is missing arms and legs, 5 fingers on his left hand are neatly cut off, and one of his calves is missing. Of course, this is the result of Deadpool not using the superpowers of the extremis virus, but simply fighting with each other. Both of them were exhausted and fell to the ground together, and the self-healing factor was repairing frantically. Soon the injuries on both of them were healed. Except for some blood on the body, it is basically impossible to tell that they have experienced a cruel and bloody battle. Logan only lost a few pieces of flesh and suffered some skin injuries because he has an adamantium skeleton. Coupled with his super self-healing ability, he recovered quickly. Deadpool, on the other hand, had the extremis virus, so his wounds healed and his limbs regenerated much faster than before. So he recovered quickly, and even his fingers and calves grew back. After Logan recovered from his injuries, he wanted to fight again and tear apart the fool who had caused him to drift here. Wait, but Deadpool's newly grown baby-like white skin stretched out his little hand and interrupted Logan's second round of fighting again. Deadpool opened his mouth and started to deceive. In the end, the two did not fight. Deadpool painted a big pie for Logan that the time administration could fix the mistakes Logan made, and the two temporarily stopped fighting. Paw paw paw. There was a burst of applause. What a wonderful, rookie fight. On the broken old sign of Fox, a tall figure with his back to the sun clapped silently. The two who were lying on the ground and temporarily reconciled could not help but look over. Logan looked solemn, and his sharp wolf sense made him aware of the terrifying strength of the newcomer. Deadpool was still heartless and started to attack again. First of all, let me make it clear that I have no intention of offending you. But Big Boss, may I know why you always appear in the sun or with your back to the sun? Do you Kryptonians have to appear with the sun? I mean, what if there is no sun at night? Can't you appear? Just like vampires, but they are nocturnal creatures, and you are diurnal creatures. Or like solar lights, they light up when there is sun, and they definitely don't light up when there is no sun. Arno slowly floated from the fox sign to Deadpool and chuckled. Hee hee, moonlight is also light, I can appear with my back to the moonlight at night. Looking at the big boss standing in front of him, Deadpool still seemed heartless and without any burden. Finally, I breathed a sigh of relief. I have to say, Big Boss, your presence really makes me feel safe. It's great to have you here, you are simply my savior. Arno unexpectedly glanced at Deadpool, who was lying on the ground and was so relaxed that he was about to fall asleep. I thought you would only say some cold jokes and bad jokes, but I didn't expect that there would be a day when you could say human words. See, Arno said before that if Deadpool didn't act cheap, there must be something more terrible than the destruction of the universe. Now, Deadpool is serious, and the crisis of the destruction of the multiverse has appeared, right? Logan patted his butt and stood up, looking at Arno with a little caution, and pointed at Deadpool casually. Who are you? The muscular boyfriend of this girl. Arno glanced at the old wolf, who was still handsome even after middle age, and his eyes were full of admiration. Strictly speaking, this is the first Marvel superhero to appear on the big screen in the previous life. It was also his childhood idol, Wolverine Logan. Although he admired this old wolf, Arno didn't have the problem of not fighting back when scolded. No, I'm his farmer. My farm is in need of a shepherd dog. I think you're a good fit. Logan's eyes twitched when he heard this. When could he bear this kind of anger? The adamantium claws came out with a bang. Deadpool, who was lying on the ground, supported his hands in a charming posture and looked at the two people who were on the verge of a sword. If I were you, I wouldn't do this. In the face of Deadpool's warning, the hot-tempered Logan responded to him with action, and his right claw stabbed Arno's thigh at lightning speed. It's not fatal here, but it can let this farmer know that old wolves can bite people. Arno didn't dodge, but just watched with interest the so-called indestructible adamantium claws attacking him. Dwang, crack, ah, the scream of pain was not from Arno who was stabbed. It was from Logan who was holding the bloody body and whose right hand was scratched by the sharp claws of the adamantium. Although the adamantium claws were not broken directly when they were inserted into Arno's thigh. However, the huge rebound force caused the claws to bend back to the back of his hand. Deadpool screamed out in empathy. Oh my God, I swear, it must be very painful, more painful than tearing off a long string of skin when the skin of the finger flies. Listening to Deadpool's perfect description, Arno, who was poked by the old wolf without even a scratch on his clothes, felt an inexplicable pain in his finger skin. Even Logan, who had already reluctantly pressed the claws back into his flesh and blood, began to ache again after the wounds had healed. It must be said that Deadpool's words were more lethal than Logan's claws, mentally. Shut your stinky mouth, Wade. Arno and Logan couldn't help but yelled at Deadpool in unison. Arno and Logan smiled at each other, and the little unhappiness just now disappeared. Although it was just Logan who was unhappy, Arno felt that it was fun to try out the sharpness of the Adelman. Deadpool crossed his hands over his mouth, secretly looked at the non-existent camera next to him, and whispered, "Wow, today we not only saw Henry's Super Wolf, but also saw the famous scene of Marvel Superman and Wolverine yelling at each other in tacit understanding. You really got your money's worth, and even made a profit." Arno and Logan ignored Deadpool, who was constantly yelling at the air. It's better to let him bother the non-existent audience than to bother the two of them. The two tough guys shook hands after a fight. Arno. Logan. A big red head stuck out from the middle of the two people's handshake. "Wade, why didn't anyone call me for the personal introduction? Are you afraid that I'll disturb you? Oh my god, you guys don't want to have a show of sympathy between tough guys, do you? I remember this is my and Logan's personal movie, Deadpool 3, Deadpool and Wolverine." When the two heard Deadpool's words, they let go of each other's hands and looked at Deadpool. To be precise, it was his stinky mouth. But before Arno and Logan could physically close Deadpool's stinky mouth, a violent buzzing sound interrupted them. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Deadpool looked over and began to pat the two people's shoulders frantically, pointing at the savage wind convoy coming towards them and screaming wildly. "Oh my god. Gosh, Mad Max. This is Mad Max. Wow, the budget for this third Deadpool movie must have exploded. I really don't know how many nights Ryan slept with the director to invite such a luxurious lineup. Can there be more surprises?" However, when the convoy approached, he saw that the blonde on the roof was not the undead Joe, but the old version of Sabretooth. After seeing that the others were just a group of third-rate mutants, Deadpool's face fell. I knew that Ryan Reynolds, that fool, didn't have the presence to invite the original cast of Mad Max. Sure enough, it was just a group of fake marginal and second-rate mutant characters. The mutants who were said to be useless by Deadpool didn't buy his visible disgust, and they were screaming to fight him. "Don't worry, kids, I'm here. I'll take care of these minions." While Deadpool was still complaining, a voice came from above the three people's heads, interrupting the mutants who were about to rush up. I saw another figure with his back to the sun appear on the Fox logo. He did a neat somersault and jumped to the side of the three people. He took off the hood on his head, revealing the face of an enthusiastic young man. "This is..." Deadpool looked at the familiar face of Justice with surprise. "Wow, it's him, it's him, he's going to shout that sentence. Avengers, Thunderbolt fire." A loud roar interrupted Deadpool's words, and the guy who looked like Captain America was on fire and soared into the sky. And a long flame burst out from his hand, falling towards the pirated Max team with a scorching breath. Thunderbolt roared excitedly in the air. "Oh, I can burn like this all day long." It must be said that this dragon-like pillar of fire is quite powerful. Even in this void, Thunderbolt's strength is actually quite good. But unfortunately, he is Thunderbolt, and there happens to be a fireman who can control fire in the convoy. Although the fireman can't make fire out of thin air like Thunderbolt Johnny, and is not even immune to the damage of fire to himself. But he can control the fire. So the unlucky enthusiastic guy Johnny, just the other party stretched out his hand, the fire went out when it approached the convoy, and even Johnny's body, the flames on the body were gradually extinguished. The Human Torch was on, and the Human Torch was finished. The flames went out, and Johnny's flying ability disappeared, causing him to fall directly from the sky. Still face down. If he landed, this face that looked like Captain America would become a damaged version. At the critical moment, a big hand grabbed Johnny's ankle. Arno looked at the Human Torch that looked like Captain America in his hand, and was somewhat interested. Captain America's version of the Human Torch, out of print, not bad. "Well, take it back. Congratulations, you have been hired, go to the training." The Human Torch had a question mark on his face, and before he could ask what, the application was successful. Arno threw the Human Torch to Deadpool. The Human Torch's vision was spinning, and when he regained his vision again, he was already in Deadpool's arms. Deadpool held Johnny in his arms and began to skillfully introduce him to the various benefits and 5 social insurances and 1 housing fund of the Manor. The team would not wait for Deadpool to slowly develop future employees for his big boss. A blonde, fleshy man jumped down from the car, pointed his claws at the 4 people, and was ruthless and didn't talk much. Submit or die. Sabretooth, Wolverine's brother from another universe. It's really unprofessional. Logan looked at Deadpool, who was popularizing the Manor business to the Human Torch without paying attention to others, and cursed helplessly. Let me do it. Nodding to Arno, who was watching the show with his arms crossed, he stretched out his steel claws again. The classic Sabretooth vs. Wolverine, the love and hate between brothers is staged again. But this Logan is not an ordinary Wolverine, he is a bloody old wolf who has slaughtered countless lives. In just one round, Sabretooth's head was chopped off. Next, Logan looked at the other people in the team with a fierce look. Or you can all come together. The fireman smiled and pressed the button next to him. A huge suction force came, and Logan was firmly attached to a huge magnet on the car. This was the tool used to trick a certain Magneto last time. Seeing that Logan was completely unable to move due to being sucked, the fireman sneered. It's your turn next. As he said that, another black-haired Asian man with a short hair jumped out of the team. Suddenly, a strong momentum came from the man and rushed towards the remaining 3 Arnos. The man twisted his neck, not taking Arno and the other 2 seriously at all, and activated his ability. Up left arrow, up pointing arrow, up right arrow. Left pointing arrow, head right pointing arrow. Down left arrow, neck down right arrow. Do you? Looking at the man covered with thorns and looking invincible. Arno, Deadpool, Human Torch, sizzle. A red light burst out, and immediately, thorns, flesh, intestines, flew everywhere. Level 5 Omega Mutant, confidence man out. Sorry, I couldn't help it just now, because it was so disgusting, I have a bit of intensive phobia. Arno said sorry, but his eyes were still shining red, without any apology. For his eyesight, watching a person's pores suddenly enlarge, and black thorns sticking out of them, that was really disgusting. Heat vision unconsciously emerged from his eyes, automatically clearing this eye-catching scene. Okay, next, do you have any special talents to show? Hurry up. Arno's tone was already a little impatient because of the hedgehog's superpowers. The expectations for the superpowers of many other mutants plummeted. The remaining mutants in the convoy looked at Arno's eyes, which were still glowing red, and swallowed their saliva in fear. Special talents, if you are not satisfied, just kill them directly. Who the hell dares to show you talents? Who knows if you have any other phobias, and I couldn't help but shoot them to death. After all, most of their abilities are somewhat unsightly, not much better than the hedgehog man who was shot. For example, slurp, when the atmosphere was tense. The toad man habitually stretched out his long tongue and licked his dry lips. The sticky saliva made Arno frown. This is what they are worried about. The other mutants felt a thump in their hearts, and there was only one word in their minds. It's over. Arno showed a heartwarming smile, the red light in his eyes extinguished, and he was in no mood to pick new employees for the Manor. These mutants are not only ugly, but also have more disgusting abilities than each other. It's better not to pollute his Manor. So unfortunately, they failed the interview and were eliminated. And the people he doesn't want should be in the soil, so. When the mutants in the convoy looked at Arno with a sunny and warm smile, thinking that they were let go and were glad. Arno blew gently at the team. Ha, crack, crack, crack. A cold current swept through the team without any pain. Except for Logan's car, everyone else in the team was frozen into ice sculptures, including the car. Logan looked at the ice sculpture world around him, but it was still hot near him, and he was a little confused. Arno did not explain that this was the freezing breath he mutated using the power of space. With his absolute control, if he wanted to freeze a grain of sand, he would not freeze an ant next to it. He just flicked his finger, and an air bomb was ejected, directly shattering the magnet that attracted Logan. There was no fun here, and Arno was going to do the work entrusted by Loki. You guys drive slowly and catch up, I'm going to see the big boss first. Bang! After saying that, he took off instantly, and disappeared into the distance after a sound explosion. Arno can fly silently, and the loud sonic boom depends on whether he wants to. He can disappear without making any sound, but there is no need. Lurking requires caution, and he wants to let everyone know that he is coming. Boom! A loud noise in the sky. The giant Ant-Man corpse base. A black shadow fell from the sky and hit the center of the many mutants gathered here. The huge air wave with yellow sand smashed several unlucky mutants nearby into pieces. Arno waved his hand, and a gust of wind was lifted, and the countless yellow sands around him were blown away. Some mutants with weaker physiques were blown away by this gust of wind. A red mist flashed, and a mutant with red skin and devilish face wearing a black suit appeared in front of Arno. Level 4 mutant, Red Devil. How dare you break into Cassandra's forces? You are looking for death. The mutants in the base are not like the mutant convoys going out hunting. There are many mutants left behind, even advanced mutants. For example, the Red Devil, and the Red Tank wearing a heavy helmet. Unlike the Red Devil, who asked a question, the stupid Red Tank rushed towards Arno like a bull with the power that made the ground tremble. In the eyes of the mutants who were looking at the dead, the Red Tank hit Arno, the uninvited guest. Then, bang, Arno just casually stretched out a hand to hold the head that hit him, and forced the Red Tank to stop. The huge impact force generated by the collision could not even spread out in his hands and was wiped out by the biological force field. I heard that your helmet can isolate the power of the mind. Arno looked at the one who was still holding. He continued to exert force, his face turned red and turned into a physical Red Tank, and the yellow light in his hand penetrated into his brain. Red Tank's already silly eyes suddenly became dull. It seems that it can't isolate all the spiritual power. Sorry, you are useless. Crack, Arno's fingers exerted a little force, and the hand that pressed against Red Tank's helmet crushed his helmet and head together. One big fool with superpower under his command is enough, not too many. And these rubbish, none of them are needed. Arno looked at the many mutants around him with indifferent eyes, and had no intention of recruiting more people. The mutants around looked at Arno's indifferent eyes, and their hearts were inexplicably cold, and the Red Tank, one of the best among them, was crushed to death. They couldn't help but feel fear in their hearts and wanted to retreat. The red mist surged on the Red Devil's body, and he even planned to teleport and escape directly. But Arno just raised a finger, and the surrounding space was instantly blocked. And all the mutants' eyes flashed yellow, and their heads exploded like blooming red spider lilies. Space blockade and mind explosion. Very simple technique. Are you still going to watch the show, pirated Professor X? Arno turned his head to look at the bald woman sitting in a wheelchair high up and watching the show leisurely. This is the culprit who destroyed the multiverse in the picture given by Loki. And the Supreme Sorcerer Ancient One has nothing to do with it. Professor X's sister, Cassandra Nova Xavier. A 5th level, Omega level mutant with many abilities such as mind control, telekinesis control, and spirit control. Cassandra stood up from the wheelchair of a certain Professor X who was killed by him. Very interesting psychic and spatial abilities. She looked at Arno and smiled with interest. But you came uninvited and killed all my men. Isn't that a bad idea? I'm in a hurry, so I'll borrow a sentence from your men. Arno slowly rose into the air, his indifferent pupils burning with a fiery red light. Submit, or die. Cassandra narrowed her eyes slightly. It had been a long time since anyone dared to talk to her like this. The last person who talked to her like this was a red-cloaked wizard. What happened to him? Oh, I remember, that wizard was skinned and bones were taken out by her, and she played with the skin in her hand for several days. Just like this. She moved her fingers slightly, and the invisible telekinesis quietly attacked Arno, which was considered to peel off the skin and flesh of this rude man. But her powerful telekinesis was offset by an inexplicable force as soon as it approached the other party's body. The next moment, bang, one of Cassandra's arms exploded. Little moves are not good, last chance, surrender or die. Arno usually doesn't give second chances, but he admires Cassandra's ability and ruthless character, so he decided to give her another chance. But it was also the last time. Cassandra's face was a little distorted, but she didn't scream, and her broken arm was regenerating at a speed visible to the naked eye. Surrender, that depends on your ability. You are unlucky, today is the day of offering, since you killed all the offerings, you can only replace them. If you can survive, I will surrender to you. Cassandra pointed to the sky in the distance behind Arno with a twisted smile. I saw the overwhelming black fog sweeping in, and there was a red light in the black fog. The garbage collector of the void, Elios. An extremely terrifying existence. No one can survive from its mouth. For others. Arno didn't even look back, just snapped his fingers. The violent red light in Elrio's eyes turned green, and he instantly became an obedient dog. And it swept back faster than before. Cassandra looked at this scene in disbelief, and her bald head was a little down. It's solved, how is it? Without waiting for her to reply or come back to her senses from the shock, Arno's big hand grabbed Cassandra's little bald head and lifted it up directly. He didn't want to wait for Cassandra to verbally surrender. It would be better for him to transform this madman who wanted to destroy everything. Arno was very skilled in transforming thoughts and wills. In an instant, a strong mental force that Cassandra had never felt before surged into her brain. Her mental power was as fragile as a baby, and she could only let the other party knead it into what the other party imagined. The will to destroy everything in her mind was covered, and it was changed to the will to be loyal and dedicated to Arno alone. After the yellow light converged, Cassandra's eyes were complicated. She clearly knew her will had been modified, but she had no way to do anything about it. Her mental power could not make any corrections. She sighed helplessly and bowed her head slightly. I will always be loyal to you, Master. Arno touched her bald head and accepted her voluntary surrender. Good girl. A force that affected the multiverse was easily solved by Arno as if it were child's play. Next, it was over after cleaning up the termites in the time administration. Arno stretched his body and a blue-green space portal appeared behind him. The other side of the door was the time administration. He stepped in, and Cassandra naturally followed him in. Mr. Paradox on the opposite side looked at the portal with a confused face. How could someone open a portal in the time administration? This is unscientific. But then he saw Cassandra and became even more terrified. How could this lunatic come to the time administration? Without waiting for him to question. Buzz buzz buzz. A wild engine sound came, and a wasteland-style off-road vehicle rushed out of Arno's unclosed portal at high speed. With huge kinetic energy, it hit Mr. Paradox squarely and knocked him and the car against the wall. God, I hit someone. I swear I didn't mean to. Deadpool shouted while continuing to step on the accelerator frantically. Mr. Paradox's blood and internal organs gushed out of his mouth and he couldn't say a complete sentence at all. At the last moment of his life, he only had time to raise his middle finger and say one word. Just like that, his role ended hastily, as if the author didn't want to write his plot anymore. Deadpool took his head out of the car window and asked in a sad tone. He couldn't stop laughing. Oh, is he dead? The other 6 people in the car. You asked why there were still 6 people. That's because when Johnny took Deadpool and the others to the Cassandra base, he also picked up his 4 teammates. They were Wolf Girl X-23, Blade, Gambit, and Erica. Johnny, the enthusiastic young man, jumped out of the car, looked at Mr. Paradox, who was broken at the waist, and made a comment. I think you are asking if he can still live after being hit in half by you. Then I think he is dead. Arno didn't care that Deadpool was deliberately taking revenge on him. He was going to kill these people anyway. Okay, the second mission is also half completed. As for the other half, Arno snapped his fingers. Deadpool and others, including the one who just joined the information of Mr. Paradox's men, appeared in the minds of the little wolf girl and others who joined the team. These 4 people are okay, there is nothing weird, just accept them together with Johnny. Next, it is the cleansing and slaughter inside the Time Management Bureau. After Arno passed the information, he did not participate, but opened a green space channel and walked in. He was going to talk to Loki about life. No one knows what Arno went to talk about. When he came back, the Time Management Bureau was already bloody. Deadpool and others completed the tasks he assigned perfectly. This bloody cleansing will surely give other TVA employees with old ideas a new understanding. As for why Deadpool was able to complete the cleansing so smoothly, you should know that the employees of the Time Management Bureau have tools such as time suspension and exile. It can only be said that this is the Time Management Bureau, but it is also a one-person hall. Everything inside is only useful when the mummy says it is useful. When he doesn't want them to work, no one can use them. Arno had no interest in these ordinary people who were trembling and working for the Time Administration. No wonder Loki caught him to work. This group of people can be said to be a bunch of trash except for the time-controlling machine in their hands. Okay, the cleansing here is completed. It's time to go back and see how the cleansing on my Earth is going. Compared with the cleansing of the Time Administration, he wanted to see how the cleansing of the Skrulls on Earth was going. Therefore, Arno did not stay for long. The blue-green space channel opened and he walked in directly with Deadpool and others. Arno Universe, Earth. That's right, Arno's Special Branch universe was not named as a parallel universe. Instead, it was directly named, Arno Universe. This was a small request that Arno made to Loki, and Loki certainly did not refuse. At this time, the Earth was stained with green blood on a large area of land, and the Skrulls had been completely extinct. Whether it was lurking among ordinary people, government troops, or Skrulls in the Skrull gathering place. There are more than 1 million Skrulls on Earth, and none of them can breathe or stand. All of them entered the Earth standing up, and turned into nutrients for the Earth when they lie down. And a certain black salted egg also pressed the pager in his hand angrily after watching his Skrull wife being brutally killed. I became a god in American comics. I rely on Krypton gold to be invincible, page 134. But obviously, he pressed the button too late. The souls of the millions of Skrulls on Earth are probably dead. It's useless for Heludan to call for help now. But what he wants now is not to save people, but revenge and regain the right to speak on Earth. Earth is the Earth of humans, not Kryptonians. Now Arno is getting more and more unscrupulous on Earth. If he dares to destroy all the Skrulls in the world without saying a word today, who knows if he will destroy all the humans in the world tomorrow on a whim. Nick Fury doesn't dare to gamble. So he took out his trump card, Captain Marvel Carol. The invincible existence who just stood there decades ago and made the Kree fleet dare not offend the Earth at all. In his opinion, even if Arno's body is very strong, Carol's body is equally strong, and there is also a binary star mode. Carol has everything that Arno has, and even has an enhanced mode that Arno doesn't have, so it may not be impossible to fight. The almost rusted destruction suit. You call it binary star mode. Not to mention killing him, but at least let Arno know that he is not invincible in this universe. On Earth, a tiger has to lie down and a dragon has to coil up. Nick Fury's anger has overwhelmed his already increasingly dull mind. He didn't realize that he ignored the dozen or so beings with similar abilities to Arno that suddenly appeared. And he forgot that the strongest superhero force on Earth now belongs to Arno's people. There is only one result for Carol to come to Earth for revenge. One person fights all the Justice League members. Or all of them beat her up alone. Earth, Stark Manor. Arno stepped out of the portal, and the power of the mind emanated, instantly covering the world. In his mind, the life forms of the world appeared, the blue belonging to humans, and the yellow of superpowers were densely lit all over the world. But none of the green life forms belonging to the Skrulls that he had specially marked before were left. He opened his eyes and nodded with satisfaction. It seemed that the Justice League had also completed the cleanup task here very well. Not a single one was left alive, which was good. As for studying or enslaving some Skrulls, Arno had never thought about it. He had no use for this disgusting ability to transform, and he didn't want others to have it. So it was better to kill them all. Arno notified everyone mentally that they could burn the bodies of the Skrulls and come back. The first to come back were Zod and a dozen other Kryptonians, who immediately reported the progress of the mission to Arno. The cleanup process was smooth. With the strength of the cleanup team, except for the Kamar-Taj lineage, it can basically be said that it is invincible on Earth. Not to mention the old nun of Kamar-Taj, who was still on Arno's side. Ancient One was still waiting for Arno to be in a good mood one day, to take over her position and let her retire early. How could he offend him because of a group of aliens? Moreover, maybe with Ancient One's sinister character, he had long been fed up with these green monkeys jumping around on Earth. It was just out of his own duty, and the Skrulls only understood humans, but did not destroy the Earth, so he ignored them. But the process of cleaning up the garbage was smooth, but there were some troubles afterwards. Tony and Zod's teams were fine. Tony cleaned up the various Secret Service departments and law enforcement departments such as the Army, which was to clean up the termites for them, so even if there was something wrong, no one could say anything to him. Of course, the most important thing is that Tony has a brother who is a god on Earth, so who dares to say anything to him? And Zod cleaned up the Skrull gathering place, where there were no humans, so no one could say anything. But the face departments such as governments of various countries that Steve led to clean up encountered a lot of trouble. Earth, London. Because the task given by Arnold was tight, and Steve himself felt that the more minutes the Skrulls existed, the more harmful they would be. So in order to quickly clear out the lurking Skrulls, he used the assassination method of the Assassination Creed version. Therefore, many Skrulls hiding among humans were killed by the team he led in public. Although he arranged for Quicksilver to cover up the bodies immediately to prevent ordinary people from panicking when they knew that there were aliens who could transform into human appearances around them. But because the cleaning team killed people in the street, it still caused quite a stir. Ordinary people didn't know that they were clearing out aliens. They only knew that a shield flew over, and their companions were smashed out and then disappeared. Especially when Steve used the vibranium shield in his hand to cut off the female leader who was transformed from a Skrull in the capital after the Prime Minister's head was taken out, the English government was shocked. Although this was transformed by an alien, you, an American, can't come to England and kill the Prime Minister just like that, right? Shouldn't such a major event concerning a country's Prime Minister be handled by the English government itself after being handed over to the English government first? What's the matter with you hunting aliens in our territory? Therefore, they waited for Captain America and others to kill all the Skrulls in the country, and then stood up hypocritically. Because they needed to investigate the real female Prime Minister and the whereabouts of many replaced officials, they planned to forcibly detain the bodies of the Skrulls killed by Captain America and others. But Steve has justice in his heart, and he is not a guy like Nick Fury who has been with the Green people for a long time and has forgotten his own color. Not to mention that the spiritual mission given by Arno includes grinding the Skrulls to ashes, and even the ashes will be scattered after killing them. Even Steve himself knows what these governments are thinking with his American hips. Given these Skrull corpses, who knows what kind of monsters they can research out. He didn't want to face a Hulk that could transform himself one day. Therefore, Steve ignored the people of the English government and directly asked Wanda to use chaos magic to wipe out all the Skrull corpses. Not to mention the corpses, not even a hair was left for them. This move made the English government and the royal family angry. This is not burning corpses, this is simply slapping them in the face. Dare to kill the Prime Minister in public this time, and dare to kill the Queen next time. Is there any law? But although it is said so, England also knows that Steve and others are not simple. Each of them has special skills and is definitely not easy to mess with. Not to mention that the cleanup team is sent by the most powerful superhero on Earth. So hard fighting is definitely not possible, unless they use weapons of mass destruction. But Steve used the Assassin's Creed version of assassination, which was carried out in the city. They can't use large-scale weapons in their own city. No one would use weapons of mass destruction in their own city, except America. So they thought of a solution that was not a solution. That was cyber violence. So they held a press conference. They called all the major news agencies to broadcast the whole thing live. They exaggerated the behavior of Captain America and others who wantonly killed people in the streets of England and publicized it through live broadcast. They planned to use netizens all over the world to bring down Captain America and other members of the cleanup team. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.